Good morning. I'm Stan Prater, Chairman of the Board of Directors for the African American Chamber of New Jersey, and welcome to the State of Black New Jersey 2020 Economic Virtual Summit. Today's summit is more important than ever before, as we are sandwiched between two pandemics, the coronavirus and systematic racism in the Black community. We have sheltered in for the last 3 months, and towns in New Jersey are just starting to reopen. And 40% of Black businesses versus 17% of white businesses in the United States will not reopen due to lack of funds and access to capital. We have also witnessed the murder of George Floyd, an African American man who refused a breath of air by a white police officer whose knee was on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. George was not the first African American to die under police arrest, but his murder was the one that moved the nation, Black, brown, and white people, to protest for the last 28 days. This type of brutality must stop. Black lives do matter. All of us participating in this summit can be a part of the solution to stop police brutality and the needless deaths of African Americans in this country, and inequities and the disparity of the Black businesses and organizations. The theme of this two-day summit is entitled Accountability, Opportunity, Education, and Equity. Therefore, it is imperative that this summit not only be informative, but we provide solutions and alternatives to jumpstart the economy in New Jersey for Black and minority business owners in the following areas: access to capital, grants, technical assistance, sustaining and developing new business relationships, corporate boards, and senior leadership positions. Therefore, on behalf of the Board of Directors, President and CEO John Harmon, and Chamber members, I encourage you to be engaged, speak your truth, and be an active participant. God bless you and enjoy the summit.
Hello and welcome to the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey's first virtual State of Black New Jersey Economic Summit. This is an engagement of business owners, stakeholders, our state legislators, and the various agencies, government agencies across the state of New Jersey. It's a conversation between those parties about systemic challenges that have plagued the economic growth and sustainability of the Black community. We're here today to engage in this conversation with our friends and our partners to find solutions that will put Black people in New Jersey in a better place. For example, Blacks, their net worth is about $5,900 versus $275,000 for whites. That is a major disparity that we must work diligently to close. In addition, we have high unemployment, poverty, low median income, and a host of other health challenges, all of which we hope to have dialogue today to come to some resolution. At the close of the day, we're hoping to have some very specific action items that we will all leave and be held accountable to deliver results. Black people are important not only to New Jersey, but to America. We build this country. It's well documented, and it speaks to our relevance and value proposition to New Jersey that we want to emphasize today and coalesce a strategy to bring it to fruition in a realistic terms as it relates to the economic standing of our people. So enjoy yourselves today. Please engage. All questions are worth asking. And we have some great keynote speakers on tap as well. This is going to be a two-day event this year, not just one day, because with this whole COVID-19 situation and the public safety issues with our Black men and women being slaughtered in the streets and in their homes, we must see some deliberate action as it relates to public safety, education, and also health in the state of New Jersey. Governor Murphy has made it clear that he wants a stronger and fairer economy, and so we're going to work to deliver that to him and work with his administration to make New Jersey work for all of us. Thank you, and we look forward to a very eventful day.
Greetings to the African American Chamber of Commerce State of Black New Jersey 2020 Economic Virtual Summit. I'm Lieutenant Governor Sheila Oliver. This year has brought many unprecedented challenges, from COVID-19 to watching unspeakable police brutality unfold before our eyes. 2020 will be remembered as the year that a nationwide united front against police brutality began, and the demand for police reforms became part of our daily conversations. We will look back in grief at the senseless loss of life, the knee on the back of a man's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. I have been moved by how we are seeing people from all backgrounds, all socioeconomic levels, and all faith traditions join together in public protest to have our society change for the better. This summit today is an extension of that betterment of society. It is an opportunity for some of the brightest minds in our state to come together to discuss accountability, opportunity, education, and equity for the Black community. The conversations that will be had on today's panels will provide people meaningful conversations that I know will lead to positive solutions for leveling the playing field for African Americans in our state. Among the outstanding lineup of speakers and panelists today is New Jersey Department of Community Affairs Assistant Commissioner Kimberly Holmes, who will be discussing some important initiatives the state and DCA have implemented to help improve the quality of life for people as we navigate this path to economic recovery. At the Department of Community Affairs, we are directly addressing some of the financial hardships that people are facing by implementing supplemental programs to help them weather this crisis. DCA recently announced a new COVID-19 Emergency Rental Assistance Program for low to moderate income households that have been financially impacted by the pandemic. And last month, we announced that New Jersey received an additional $31.5 million in federal funding for the state's COVID-19 response. This community development block grant funding can be used for such activities as buildings and improvements, assistance to businesses, increased public services, planning, capacity building, and technical assistance in our communities. In March, Governor Murphy and I announced critical tenant and homeowner protections through an executive order that placed a moratorium on evictions throughout the state of emergency to help keep people in their homes. The good news with regard to COVID-19 is that the data is showing that our rate of infection is far lower in comparison to our peer states like Texas, Georgia, and Florida, states that rushed to reopen. Our diligence and collective efforts to flatten the curve are working. We need to keep practicing social distancing and wearing masks to protect ourselves and others from this virus. Our mantra is that public health will create economic health. We will weather this storm, but we have to do it as one New Jersey family. I want to thank John Harmon and the African American Chamber of Commerce for hosting this important summit today. The conversations you are having about creating opportunities and pathways to success for the Black community are extremely important for advancing our mission of accountability and equity in New Jersey. Have a great summit, and please stay healthy and stay safe.
inaugural virtual African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey Economic Summit. My name is Daria Torres, managing partner of the Walls Torres Group, and it is an honor to have been asked to moderate this first panel on opportunities and needs. I want to thank John Harmon, founder, CEO, architect of the strategy and vision of the Chamber, and his entire team for their labor of love in putting this event together. We, this group of panelists, have seen both their labor and their love in putting this event together, and we're pleased to be with you this morning for this conversation. I will ask our panelists in just a moment to introduce themselves, but what I'd like to do first, just to set a tone, is to share with you, by way of a quote by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., remind you of something relevant that he said. There are some things in our nation and in our world to which I'm proud to be maladjusted. I never intend to adjust myself to segregation and discrimination. I never intend to become adjusted to religious bigotry. I never intend to adjust myself to economic conditions that will take necessities from the many to give luxuries to the few, and leave millions of people perishing on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of prosperity. I thought, better than any words that I could share, that would be an appropriate way to ground our conversation this morning. Another way I'd like for our conversation to be grounded is for you to know who these people are, these dedicated servants, leaders, these dedicated public officials are, who are giving their time this morning to share their insights and their perspectives with you. So one by one, I'll ask them in maybe a minute to 2 minutes to just give you a little taste of their story. I'll start by who's on my screen to the left and work my way down through the board here. Why don't we start with Mr. Leotis Sanders, Vice President of the Office of Civil Rights and Diversity Programs with New Jersey Transit. Briefly, sir, share your story.
Thank you. Good morning, Daria, and good morning to all the folks viewing in the African American Chamber. Thank you, John, and all the members. It's a pleasure to be here today. As Daria said, my name is Leotis Sanders. My title is the Chief of the Office of Civil Rights and Diversity Programs at New Jersey Transit. In that capacity, I'm accountable for the Office of Business Development, which runs our DBE and SBE programs. I'll talk a little bit about that. As well as our ADA compliance, so Americans with Disabilities Act compliance, Title VI and environmental justice, which is equity in our services and when we build facilities, and our diversity and inclusion initiative, which is really making sure that everybody who interacts with our organization, our employees, customers, business, and community partners, feel that they're a part of this organization, that we see them, that we take their ideas, their needs into account in everything that we do, and that they belong. A little bit about me. I didn't have the pleasure of being born in Jersey. I was born and raised in Brooklyn. My father had moved out to Brooklyn from East New York when my mom was pregnant with me because he wanted a better life. And to his mind, a better life meant moving to a white neighborhood. So I grew up in what was 85% Italian American. If you've ever seen any of those 80s movies that take place in Brooklyn, probably they took place in the same place where I grew up. That studio in Saturday Night Fever, when they danced, that was maybe 5 minutes away from me. So, in some ways, life was better. In a lot of ways, it wasn't. And I came in contact with a lot of experiences that really had me reflect on my Blackness, how it mattered in life, and how I wanted to make a world in which there was true equity and people didn't experience the things that I did as a young boy. And so that's really guided the choices that I've made all the way to right now, what I do working in civil rights and D&I. So this is not something I just came upon or fell into. This is a passion for me. And I'm very proud to be doing this work at New Jersey Transit right now.
Thank you. Thank you so much. At this point, I'd like to ask Dr. Kimberly Holmes to share a bit of her story. She is Assistant Commissioner and Chief of Staff with the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs.
Good morning, Daria, and thank you, and to Mr. Harmon and to everyone. I consider it an honor to be on this panel with everyone here. So about me, I come from humble beginnings. I'm the fourth child of 10 from Jersey City, New Jersey. I went to school in Jersey City. I went to Seton Hall University. That's where I graduated from law school back in 1993. When I if I had to say how my life was, I would say growing up, it was more like a tale of two cities because I grew up in what we would call the hood, but I went to school across the other side of the railroad track, and it was a different reality when you go from one end of the city to the other end of the city. And I think that helped shape who I am, and it helped guide the decisions that I've made. When I graduated from law school, I became a law clerk to Judge Shirley A. Tolentino in Jersey City. And then I moved to East Orange to become their prosecutor. After that, I went to Bergen County Prosecutor's Office, where I started trying cases and also working with the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Training Camp in Glasgow, Georgia, where I started prosecuting people for hate crimes and bias crimes. After that, I became the Chief of Staff for the Division of Rape Counsel, and I did that for 12 years. And then I went to work for the City of Newark, working with law enforcement and with Director Anthony Ambrose, Mayor Raz Baraka. So I stayed there for a year. And then when we had our first African American Lieutenant Governor, Sheila Oliver, I left the City of Newark to come to DCA. And so I've been at DCA now for 2 years, started out as a regulatory officer, and I went from a regulatory officer to being the assistant commissioner and now the chief of staff. So I would just say to anyone, never despise the days of small things. Work hard, do all that you have to do. Yes, you might have to be better than the best, but that's what's required of us at this time. And working hard, not taking any shortcuts, it led me to be right here with all of you. So I thank you for even having the opportunity to be here. So that's all I have to say about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I can see all our smiles lighting up as we're being inspired by these background stories. And I'll ask next if Dr. Repollet, you could share as Commissioner of Education, New Jersey, and President of Keene University.
Good morning, Daria. Thank you, John, and the members of the Chamber for this opportunity to add to the rich conversation we're going to have during the 2020 Virtual Summit. As the Commissioner of Education, I could not have more humbled to lead 1.4 million students. Being the first commissioner of color, or African American, I would say black, I'm going to say black, being the first black commissioner of education is yet humbling, but also challenging, right? Because we understand as people of color, especially black, we have to be better than our counterparts, right? We have to make sure that what we do is ethical. But what's more humbling is the fact that I get to kind of design policy and craft regulations for 1.4 million students. But I see education differently. I see it through the lens of a black boy who went to 7 schools in 13 years, who was on free and reduced lunch, who was on welfare. So I see it differently from probably the previous, and I know from the previous commissioners of education. So the conversation I've been talking about throughout my tenure is equity. I think when we level the playing field, when we as blacks have an opportunity, you see the success we've had based on this panel, and you see how successful blacks we are out there. So my job is to make sure that we as a Department of Education, we level the playing field for all students. But more importantly though, we need to make sure that we also consider their social and emotional and their well-being. And I think at times we kind of tend to forget that, because when you're living in poverty, some of those challenges may manifest in the classroom. And if you truly don't understand how to deal with that manifestation, then guess what? You label it as someone who should be classified, someone who's a disciplinary problem. But not understanding there's a cultural competency that kind of goes with teaching students of color, teaching students in poverty. So I think my message over my tenure was the conversation of equity in action, and being able to not just talk about equity, and hopefully we can get in that conversation later today, but give me some evidence of equity. Are we diversifying the workforce? Because we understand that that's important. Are we providing post-secondary opportunities? So the lens in which I've seen education, and which I've kind of been leading the state as through that lens of someone who understands that if you level the playing field, we will have an opportunity to prosper.
Well, thank you for that introduction. We are fortunate to have your leadership because clearly you're not just thinking about the 1.4 million in aggregate, you're thinking about each one of them individually. So thank you for your leadership. Why don't we go next to Mr. Manuel Manny da Silva, Chief Executive Officer, New Jersey School Development Authority.
Good morning. Thank you. And Manny, I don't need to be, it doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. But it's a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm the CEO of the New Jersey Schools Development Authority. Let me start off by thanking the Chamber and John Harmon for inviting me and for hosting this summit. And thank you, Daria, for moderating this portion of the event. So what's my story, you ask? I started outside the U.S. I was born in Portugal and immigrated to the U.S. with my family in 1975. My dad was a union crane operator and my mother was a seamstress. I was raised in Newark and attended the public school system there. In the early stages of my career, I thought I wanted to be a doctor, but ultimately decided to pursue civil engineering. And as such, I also attended, I went to NJIT in Newark. Out of school, I worked for a couple of engineering firms and then moved on to the general contracting side of things, the construction, and eventually decided to join the public sector. I've been in the field for more than 20 years with experience in engineering and construction in both public and private sector. I started working at the authority in 2010 and have been involved with all aspects of projects during my tenure. Prior to becoming CEO, my roles at SDA included Vice President of Construction Operations, Program Director, Senior Manager of Engineering. As you may know, the New Jersey Schools Development Authority oversees the construction and modernization of school facilities, and our current portfolio of projects represents $2 billion. In my 10 years at the SDA, I've seen our program grow and evolve into an organization that continues to deliver schools on time and on budget. We support, minority businesses and SBE. This is due to the processes we have in place alongside with dedicated and talented employees at the SDA that we're able to accomplish all of this. We look forward to opening up 3 new schools, and in addition, in September this year, these projects will ultimately provide more than 1,800 seats for New Jersey students. That work that we are responsible for makes a difference to the lives of thousands of students like myself growing up, and many of you throughout New Jersey and each year. And that pretty much summarizes, I guess, my life in a nutshell. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, it is quite a rich, robust, and impactful nutshell. Thank you.
Thank you.
Why don't we go next to Zenobia Field, Senior Policy and Program Advisor with the New Jersey Department of Transportation.
Good morning, everyone. It's a privilege to join you today. And it's not only a privilege to join you, but to get insight from some of our colleagues and understand how we're responding to the needs and how we're being transparent about opportunities. I am a longtime New Jersey resident. I was originally born in Plainfield, New Jersey. I graduated from Plainfield High School. I went on to study architecture because I was interested in design. From architecture, I went on to urban and regional planning. And my reason for that is I wanted to understand how social policy impacted not only the built environment, but impacted our quality of life, and understanding what I could do to contribute to that message. From there, I've worked in the private sector. I worked for nonprofits, looking in an advocacy role, actually looking for different grant opportunities. Then I spent 12 years but when I came back to New Jersey from Washington, D.C., I spent 12 years at a metropolitan planning organization. Metropolitan Planning Organization, they receive funding for locals to make sure that they're not only participating, but they're actually contributing to the decision-making process. My background is in heading the planning department, looking at various applications, looking at community economic development. Anything that's responding to how are we increasing access to opportunity. At the department, I've been here for about 1.5 years. We're looking at advising on decision-making and grant programs. So I am excited to talk to you about our opportunities that we have available and to better understand how we can respond to the needs.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So interesting to hear how your background in urban planning and just thinking about the built environment influences now even how you're approaching policy work. So thank you. Dr. Wright, Program Manager of Capacity Building with the Office of Diversity and Inclusion at the Port Authority.
Good morning, and thanks to the Chamber and Daria and my panelists. Leotis Sanders and I are colleagues, but it is my hope after this that all of you will become my colleagues, because I'm really excited about all the things that you shared so far. I grew up in a city, Orange, New Jersey, 2.2 square miles. And as I think about where I am in my career right now, I actually look back over certain data points that I share with my grandchildren. One data point is in high school, I was a part of a small team that actually convinced our senior class to hold our prom at an African American institution in the city. It was the first time that it was done. It was the only time that it was done. But we have that as a data point. I went on to Rutgers University, where I studied history under the wonderful Dr. Clement Price. And I wanted to study history while I was also working in technology, because I believed that it would give me a feel for community and for people. Post Rutgers came back to the city, and in East Orange, worked on a number of different boards while I was also working at the Port Authority for my first tour of duty in the middle 80s. And interestingly enough, as I chaired the Parking Authority Board, the Economic Development Board, the mayor then, Cordell Cooper, asked me to chair a board called Community Development for 2000. And I had the pleasure of serving with a number of concerned citizens on that board, including our now Lieutenant Governor, Sheila Oliver. Leaving the area for about 20 years, I went to Washington and worked for Fannie Mae. I worked for Citibank, and I worked as the Executive Vice President for the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. And I mentioned that because some of you may be aware of something called CBC Weekend, or Annual Legislative Conference. That was something that I led for a number of years, where thousands of us came there. And the interesting point about those thousands convening in Washington, in my interviews, I would say over a period of time of 4 days, we had all the right answers to all of our problems in our collective community. Our challenge was to connect the dots, bring the brain power to the challenges, and solve our problems. A few years ago, Mike Messiah, Chief Diversity Officer of the Port Authority, asked if I would come back because they had just done a disparity study. The numbers weren't good, and he wanted me to focus on building capacity for African Americans and minority vendors, particularly in the architect and engineering space. And so we started that journey about 2 years ago, met John Harmon and some wonderful folks. We are continuing that journey, and I'm very happy to be here with all of you this morning.
Thank you so much. I think this word journey is so fitting for what we've all talked about, right? How our steps and the choices that we've made in our professional and even educational careers have led us to where we are today. This panel is not about me at all, but I have to share that I too am a lifelong Jersey resident. Originally from the city of Camden, grew up in Willingboro, New Jersey, and graduated from Willingboro High School. Went on to UVA studying engineering, came back to the city of Camden and worked as an engineer at Lockheed Martin. After that, went to business school, ended up coming back to Camden again and teaching at Rutgers Camden for 10 years. So you can see there's something about that invincible city that keeps pulling me back. But suffice it to say that this is about our journey and our contributions and our commitment to the state and to the people that comprise the state. So our conversation today is certainly, as you've heard from everyone's introductions, is going to hit on the 4 themes that this conference is about. The 4 themes of accountability, of opportunity, of education, and of equity. And the way we're going to approach the next segment of this panel discussion is that each of our panelists has prepared some remarks in response to a targeted question that will allow them to share more about the opportunities and the needs that they see from their unique vantage point. And as time permits, We'll have some follow-on comments and organic discussion that may emerge as a result of each of those prepared remarks. Given our timing and where we are, I'll ask that each of the panelists keep their prepared remarks to 4 to 5 minutes, maybe trending more towards the 4 end. So at about, say, 3.5 minutes, I'll give each of you a little wave so you know that you're at the 3.5 minute mark, and you can gauge from there how you'd like to wrap up. So why don't we start where we ended the last segment, Dr. Wright? The question for you, sir, is what examples of capability building for minority, women, small, disadvantaged business enterprises, MWSB, DBE, has your agency implemented, and what initiatives are in place to ensure that that participation is happening in agency contracts?
Thank you, Daria, for the question. And as many as you and the panelists know, there has been a number of disparity studies for what we'll say is M&W participation over the years that have shown that even when we are able to identify availability of businesses, their utilization has been historically low. And so a couple of things the agency has done over the years, and we continue to add on to that, is a mentor protege program that was started on the construction side years ago to bring in construction firms and align them, put them through a curriculum and align them with successful or larger construction firms to provide areas of opportunity and teaching, and to make sure that there was a program for them to grow in a particular area that they self-selected. So whatever part of their business they felt they needed help in, the organization would try to align them with a mentor who can help them in that particular area. That program has been in existence for some 20 years now, and is still producing successful business owners out of that on the construction side. As I mentioned, I was called back 2 years ago because we found that our professional services, architects and engineering, were not getting the same level of service or the same level of attention, I should say, with respect to growing their business entities. And so I did some research. I talked to a number of folks around the region. I tried to find out what was being done specifically for architects and engineers. And I came up with a program that we call the A&E Principals Academy. And essentially, it's a boot camp. It's targeted at business owners who actually are principals who own their company, and they're good at the technology. They have their license. They understand what they want to do. But this program is really geared to helping them work on their business as opposed to working in their business. So we bring them out of their companies. We bring them together as a cohort. I was able to identify an organization that had spent some 30 years in the teaching aspect of architects and engineers, Zweig out of Arkansas. Brought them in. They established a boot camp, but it's not just their boot camp. We put together internally the engineering department at the agency so that they might be able to provide instruction and training and mentoring as well. And we also network with the AACCNJ, which is the American Engineering Corporation. As you know, I see you smiling, Daria. So we network with them to try to put a group of support around these firms. But here's the interesting thing that we found out. We're now we have 2 cohorts, and I'm now beginning to recruit for the 3rd cohort for the end of the year. But what we found was that by bringing these firms together, allowing them to share their stories, allowing them to sit before folks who had actually grown larger businesses, they begin to socialize amongst themselves. And my proudest achievement is that now a number of them have formed a collective organization called CBAC, which is the Collective Black Architects and Engineers, out of our cohort, and now they go after jobs together. Rather than going after RFPs individually, they go after them together. And so to your last part of your question, how do we hold them accountable? We have a very strong compliance department that looks at our contracts and looks at minority participation and make sure that we make adjustments if we don't see a level playing field, as was mentioned earlier.
Thank you so much for that overview. And that last part actually hit on one of the questions that I saw come in from our viewers. So the question was, is there any monitoring of the programs or supplier diversity initiatives that can provide info or a baseline so that we see the results and can watch the improvement over time? So you addressed that without possibly even knowing that question was there. So thank you for covering that. And in addition, this idea of an apprenticeship model, essentially where capacity building can be provided to business owners as they're growing in their own development, and the cohort-based approach as well to building community amongst business owners, I think is quite critical. Would any of the other panelists like to react to anything they heard mentioned?
Yes, I think it's very important, Daria, and thank you, Dr. Wright, for really talking about the apprenticeship programs. I think as we look at K-12 and then now me jumping into higher ed arena, we need to make sure that we talk about providing opportunities. How do we get involved in economic and workforce development? So the state of New Jersey, over the past 4 years under Governor Murphy, we've kind of opened up, we call these career dual enrollment schools that offer career, we call them PTEC, career opportunities and also dual enrollment. So the great thing about that is that they're providing not only the career and soft skills you need to be successful in business, but they're also creating that pathway for those students to actually have an opportunity to go to college, get an associate's degree before they graduate high school. And I think as we start to prepare them and put them in opportunities to be successful, so you're right, we need to start thinking about the economic advantage and how education plays a role in that. And that's by creating that workforce. And I think it's important that the earlier we create the workforce, middle school, kindergarten, start giving them experiences on careers. If they don't have these models at home, then we as a school, we're responsible. We call it the moral obligation. So I think the work that you're doing, I look forward to having a conversation with you offline to be able to sit and say, what can we do to kind of have this seamless transition between K-12, higher ed, and then the work that you're doing with. So I think it's important. I think you hit on something, apprenticeship programs. We're now looking at different career pathways because one size does not fit all. And we understand that. I think an apprenticeship programs is something that we as Black folks need to get involved in early.
Dr. Rebelo, why don't we stay with you, Commissioner? What does equity in education look like? I mean, that's a big question. That's a big question.
And so, but so the COVID-19 pandemic has kind of underscored the stark disparate impact in health, economics, and education, and what exists around the country. Now, this has been occurring long before the pandemic, COVID-19. Our brick and mortar schools had inequalities long before, but however, it's now putting that spotlight on the inequities, and that's important for us. So I think we need to continue to be able to tackle the digital divide, look at this disproportionate access to resources among our students. So when I'm thinking about equity, let's just talk about in theory, because I don't think it's like a vision statement, right? It's there, and you try to aspire for equity. However, it's kind of something. It's not something you can just do tomorrow and say, I've achieved equity. So in theory, equity means providing necessary support at the right time to ensure students, regardless of race, religion, sexual orientation, and socioeconomic, has access to high quality education. So what does that look like and what we're trying to do in New Jersey? Two things I talked about. One thing I talked about earlier, social and emotional well-being, right? Understanding that, we talk about reading, writing, and arithmetic. However, if your mindset is not right, you're not going to receive that information. And if you're told that you're less than in a classroom or at home, that you're not X, Y, Z, you're going to carry that baggage and believe that. So I think, the social and emotional piece, and people are talking about that, but with mental health, that well-being is important. And I think the pandemic right now there's food insecurities. There's social isolation now because these schools were once, these brick and mortars were once these safe havens for our students. When they come in and they get that hot meal, they get that loving, nurturing environment, right? So we need to make sure that we can continue that. So number one, social and emotional well-being. Number two, opportunities for post-secondary success. I'm a firm believer of that, right? We talk about wealth, right? We talk about how do you move up out of your socioeconomic situation is you acquire wealth. Whether you purchase a home, whether you can have access to loans, whether you own your own business, entrepreneur, I think we need to start creating those opportunities because, as I indicated, that one size doesn't fit all. So we were under mindset at one point that every kid must go to college. And we made sure we put stringent, rigorous standards to make sure that when these kids go to school, they're going to be prepared. However, we understand now that when the workforce is aging and we don't have plumbers, we don't have people to do these jobs. Now, all of a sudden, you have a workforce that we cannot fill, such as transportation and the engineers from the trains. So we forgot about the basic part of we have an infrastructure. And how do we sustain an infrastructure? By creating a workforce. So now we're trying to shift our mind to say, okay, now equity doesn't just include college. It includes military. It includes post-secondary success. It includes careers. It includes opportunities that are afforded to them based off of their own lived experiences. So, and I do think that educators need to really think about innovation and how do we create an environment to where we can strive for equity, right? And that's looking at diversifying the workforce. I mean, when you have 16% of New Jersey educators' workforce is of color, but yet we have about 80-something% of our students are of color. It's an imbalance right there. So I think, and I'm not going to go into statistics. We all know that research says that when you have a person that looks like you sitting in that classroom, they can relate to you. You have less kids going into in-school suspension, less schools get suspension. We understand that. So I think as we continue to strive for equity, if we just keep in mind, let's just make sure everyone has an equal opportunity. Let's make sure that we level the playing field. And if we do that and we can continue to strive for equity, then it will no longer be a theory, but be more a reality.
That's so critical, this idea that it's not like a snap of the finger. This is something that really, it propagates through the entire pipeline from pre-K to post-secondary into the workforce and all the various career options or pathways that one might explore. Reactions. There was so much there that the commissioner set up for us to respond to. Is there are there one or two comments that people would like to offer in reaction?
I just like to jump in just quickly. He's so right. In part of our capacity building does include apprentice programs at the high school level, including the Donald M. Payne Vocational School in Newark, as well as high schools in the New York area. But he's so right. You know, Dr. King said that all work has dignity, and while we have taken our eye off the ball, there are literally thousands of jobs that go wanting in the area of plumbing and electrical and other particular trades. And so, and to the point that Commissioner Lamont meant, our infrastructure is in shams. And if we ever get an infrastructure bill that many believe will be in the trillions of dollars, there still needs to be people to do that work. So I am in 100% agreement that we need to start as early as possible introducing our community and our children to these opportunities that are going to be here for a number of years.
Absolutely.
I just want to chime in if I could. I agree with Commissioner Repollet and Dr. Wright, and that one of the pieces towards driving equity is the facility itself. That's what we focus on. We have 31 SDA districts. That facility is extremely important to the emotional development, to the atmosphere that's provided for the student, to the technology that they're provided with, and it goes a long way. Our infrastructure, to Dr. Wright's point, is in dire need of continued upgrade, new schools being built, old ones taken offline. Some of the facilities are over 100 years old. But secondly to that, I think going back to what Commissioner Repollet is, I see a shift When we deliver the Trenton Central High School, there's a greater shift on preparing students so that when they leave high school, they're ready for a career, not just a job, but a career that it allows them to excel and grow over time, and take care of their family and take care of themselves.
Indeed, indeed.
Can
And
I add?
I just want to add, I'm sorry, it looks like I cut off Dr. Holmes, but I think one of the things that the commissioner and Dr. Wright mentioned is that looking at infrastructure with a different definition, looking at our social network and the benefit of that, I think what we're going to hear throughout this panel is that we have infrastructure that we can leverage ourselves. I heard Dr. Wright talk about the Port Authority and looking at transportation and linking it to our architecture and engineering contractor, and the commissioner mentioning how we connected to these various industries. I think if we're working together to see, well, in workforce development, looking at different transportation, looking at economic development, we have resources that we can be leveraging together. And I think that's going to be part of the theme of this panel, looking at how we're making those opportunities available.
well, I'd love if you could keep that thread of the conversation going, Ms. Fields, with your question, because while we're on this topic of infrastructure and of opportunities being created differently, thought of differently, your focus is around the transportation sector, around the bid and the grant opportunities, shovel in the ground, capital projects. Why don't we hear from your vantage point what equity looks like in those realms?
I think first starting, and what we've heard from the other panelists, is that we need to be more transparent about our process. How do you engage in the process, whether we're talking about looking at vendor contracts? How do you hear about these contracts that might be available, particularly for disadvantaged minority women-owned businesses? Knowing how to navigate our state process, so making sure that we create a space where that conversation can happen and you get a point of contact to know when opportunities are available. So one of the things that we're doing at the department is that we have contractor venture forums. We have expos. We go around when we're getting ready for grant solicitations. We have listening tours where we're not only explaining what type of resources are available, but how can you be a successful applicant, or how can you be a successful vendor? How do you become a qualified vendor? Knowing that even if you're not a qualified vendor, you're not even going to be able to pull up to the table, let alone sit down and partake of it. I'm going to do a little plug here as an aside, because we do have some grant opportunities available coming up on July 1st. That it's important that we're also making sure that our underserved communities are aware of what's out there. So we have our municipal aid grants. Our municipal aid grants not only looking at, well, transportation, does that just mean that I want to pave my road? No, it means that if you depend on public transportation, how are you getting safe routes to transit, which I'm sure Leo is going to talk about later? How are you doing in terms of looking at, if you're dependent on biking and walking to work, how are you doing that safely, making sure that we're saving lives? We have Amazon. Those are entry-level work. If we look at how do you get a career there, looking at the transportation and logistics industry. What are we looking at in terms of local freight impact funds, and making sure that if you're walking to Amazon and you have to walk along a train track, because that's the only way that you can get to that warehouse, are we actually making the investments to protect that worker because they're protecting their quality of life? And then when we look throughout, and you mentioned Project Pipeline before, whether you're talking about coming up with the concept of what that project is. We just had the environmental justice bill passed. Whether you're looking at what are we doing to reduce emissions, what are you looking at to say, well, where do you have that disproportionate concentration? of pollution happening, making sure that we're actually engaging our advocacy, our community-based organization, from our outreach process to moving on to how we're doing our data analysis, our collections, what type of studies are we doing? Because the challenges that may be in our underserved communities are different than the collective 565 municipalities, but we still have to respond to all of those. We don't have a finite budget. What are the options to looking at how we're investing that budget? What are we looking at as our priority? So where we're deciding where are we going to invest those capital dollars, and how are we going to, what needs are we going to respond to and when? And one of the things we started off by mentioning is making sure that we're engaging the stakeholders that are going to keep us accountable and committed to the process. And I heard monitoring going on. So I saw the finger, so I'll pause there.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's by no means because we and the 90 people listening are interested in hearing more. It's only so that we can ensure that we have full participation in the conversation. But what I heard there is about demystifying the process and preparing people to participate in a way where they're not disadvantaged from the door, right? Reactions. I think all of that was so critical, but is there, did it trigger any particular thoughts from where you sit, hearing what Ms. Fields laid out?
Yeah, I think from our standpoint, it's outreach. Is education, is listening, and is putting yourself in a position not just to hear how well you think you're doing, but hear from folks who say you're not doing enough. How can you do more? That sort of. So we can never do enough outreach from our vantage point, and collaboration across the board with various peers and stakeholders to see what are you doing well, how can we borrow that in our particular space. So it really is the outreach that's so important.
You're hitting on a really important point there as well, which is this idea of having humility about how can you be doing better, right? I mean, to listen is one thing, to listen and then do something about it is another. And clearly we are about doing something about what we're hearing. Why don't we go next to Manny Da Silva at SDA? What about some of the opportunities that you're helping to supply, particularly for diverse contractors and the opportunities for small businesses more broadly within New Jersey?
Okay, so I guess the common theme is equity and infrastructure. At SDA, it's school infrastructure. At the SDA, the contracts award, our goal is for them to be representative of the diversity of our contracting community, as well as the students in the communities we serve. So how do we do that is the big question. At SDA, as we are referred to, the Schools Development Authority, we oversee construction and modernization of school facilities in 31 of the SDA districts. There's over 500 school districts in New Jersey. We do also provide funding for regular operating districts related to schools construction project. This conference/summit is a wonderful opportunity to bring together those various stakeholders to talk about the importance of diversifying the state's contracting supply chain. Diversity in the supply chain leads to growing New Jersey, and it means more competition and more opportunity. So starting with, we have an obligation to ensure that 25% of the total dollars value of every public advertised contract procured by the SDA is awarded to small businesses. And we regularly exceed that goal. Additionally, SDA advocates and encourages subcontractor awards to minority, MBE, and or women-owned WBE firms on school projects. The SDA Small Business Enterprise Program's 25% goal can be met by one of two ways. First, we designate certain contracts as set-aside contracts open to bid by SB registered prime consultants, contractors, or vendors only. An example is we have an emerging project down in Bridgeton High School. We've advertised that project as an SB set aside for the construction management portion of it. Now, in order to bid on that job, then you have to be a firm that is classified as a small business enterprise with the New Jersey Department of Treasury Division of Revenue and Enterprise Services. A mouthful, actually. Second, for all contracts, including SB set-aside contracts, prime consultants, prime contractors, and prime vendors are required to award contracts totaling a minimum of 25% to registered SBE subcontractors, subconsultants, and or sub-vendors. Additionally, in December of last year, regulations were established by the New Jersey Department of Treasury to have firms make a good faith effort to ensure that at least 3% of total dollar value of all publicly advertised contracts are awarded to disabled veteran-owned businesses. Again, the SDA is committed to reaching and exceeding that goal. But that's not enough. You know, similar to what Dr. Wright said, we also try to foster and develop opportunities that will increase our small business bidder pool and work first through education, training, and development. As such, you know, we accomplish this through two different initiatives or avenues. First, we offer an annual contractor training program to assist small, minority, women, and disabled veteran-owned business by helping prepare firms to work with SDA and work with the state of New Jersey. For example, SDA will assist companies with learning how to maneuver the SDA's infrastructure or website, as well as other state agency websites to find, bid on, and potentially win an award of a government contract or be selected as a subcontractor. This is a free program, and applications are available or will be available later this summer. You can check our website. It's www.njsda.gov. But the second way that we accomplish this goes to the heart of education. Again, Dr. Wright. Second, we support, SDA supports a scholarship program in furtherance of the SDA's effort to provide funding for on-the-job and off-the-job outreach and training programs for minority group members and women in construction, trade occupations, or other occupations utilized in the performance of public contracts. The scholarship is geared towards women and minority students who reside in New Jersey, towards the cost of enrollment in an eligible program at one of New Jersey's approved county colleges or vocational schools. We partner with HESA, the Higher Education Student Assistance Authority, who administers the program on our behalf, on behalf of the SDA. The grants benefit women and minority students who are pursuing programs that will prepare them for careers in the construction industry. So not just jobs, we're talking about careers. That's key right there. So we're committed to, and we stand ready to springboard off of any new initiatives that are put forward by the state in support of small businesses. We value our small businesses. We look forward to having them join our program, and we want them to become a part of our SDA team, our SDA family. I think that truly summarizes, our efforts at the SDA in creating diversity, increasing our bidder pool, reflect the communities that we serve.
It sounds very multifaceted, and definitely appreciate your command of all of the quantitative measures that are in place to assure accountability around having targets and goals in place. It looked like Dr. Repollet, you wanted to react to something.
Yes, because I think we'll go back to, equity, and we talk about accountability, especially in regards to local boards of education. We have over 625 plus school districts that award contracts, professional services, and local contracts under the bid threshold of about $40,000. So there you have an opportunity for Black and brown companies to have a slice of the pie. And I think that they're being excluded off of these big projects based off of their ability to be able to bid and to be able to have the capital and resources for larger projects. But there's also an area which I think that we should start looking at and demanding, especially with the African American Chamber of Commerce, really looking at, well, there's a bid threshold, there's small contracts that our people can get. Why are we taking advantage of that? A, it builds the community up. Instead of Asbury Park, we hire local contractors to come in to cut the grass, to do small projects, to do painting, because therefore we're spurring the economy. So to go back what John said, to Manny said, I think we need to look at that as far as accountability, holding boards of ed and holding superintendents accountable, because they make the recommendations. Our school board members and our school BAs can do that. I think that's an opportunity. When we look at problemtunity, there's an opportunity for us to kind of get a sector, a piece of that sector of professional services, to be able to ensure that local communities can actually benefit from local dollars coming in for the school board.
Yeah, I think that all of this is reminding me to, I guess, not let us get too far away from the backdrop of what's happening right now. We're not in normal times. We are still emerging from a pandemic, in the midst of trying to do all these other disparity closing and gap closing measures. All right, so that's complicating our efforts. We heard in the opening remarks, the recorded piece that preceded our panel, of how disproportionate the impact has been on African American owned, Latinx owned, Asian owned, even immigrant owned businesses relative to majority white owned businesses. There's this gap that we know exists. So I'm going to ask next, with that reminder, Mr. Sanders, if you could talk about what you see as the means to creating opportunity for disadvantaged businesses, particularly as we are emerging from this pandemic and operating in a world that has largely become virtual, a la this panel.
Absolutely. Thank you, Daria. And I just want to start saying just a couple of things. For one, I've been withholding my comments because a lot of what I want to say is amen, and I know that we're short on time, but I really appreciate everything that everyone is sharing. I think it's natural for people, when they look at the great things that Dr. Wright's doing at Port and what Ms. Fields was talking about at DOT, to ask, is NJ Transit doing those things? Certainly I just want to let folks know that we are in close partnership with our sister agencies. And as Keith knows, I'm a great admirer of the things that he's doing over there in Port. So when it comes to the mentorship and apprenticeship programs he spoke about, we are looking at how we can model those same things here at Transit. So if you have that question, just know that, yes, we're in live conversation about that. The other thing I just want to say clearly, just to tell on myself, is that I did time my comments, and they came out probably on the closer to 5-minute mark. So I'm going to try to summarize and condense and be swift, but also clear. The main thing that I wanted to share with our business partners and community partners in the African American Chamber of New Jersey today is that New Jersey Transit is still open for business and still looking to do business with our prime, disadvantaged, and small business enterprise partners, especially in the current challenging economic environment. I say disadvantaged and small business enterprises, or DBEs and SBEs as we call them, rather than African American owned firms or minority and women owned businesses, because currently we at NJ Transit do not have mechanisms to set MWBE goals on our state funded contracts. However, any minority women owned business may qualify for the DBE designation, which applies to all of our federally funded contracts, which is where a substantial portion of our mega project contracting opportunities come from. It is also worth applying for the SBE designation, since a large part of our contracts are state funded. I'll speak a little bit about the high level aspects of who we are as an agency, because I think that's important to know, and then a little bit about what our Office of Business Development does to support firms, and then some quick points about important things to know in this environment. So start off with the context. I think it's important to know who NJ Transit is. We just released our 10-year strategic plan. Now I have to say I've been with New Jersey Transit for 11 years, and this is the first time we've created and released a strategic plan, which is a statement about who we are as an organization and what we're looking to achieve. One of the 5 goals of this plan is to power a stronger and fairer economy for all the communities in the region. And this is an explicit acknowledgement of our commitment to having all businesses representing all communities having opportunities on our contracts. With that plan, we also released a capital plan. That's a comprehensive investment strategy, more than 100 projects talking about all aspects of our service. You can look and see those kinds of projects and what opportunities may be there for you and your business at njtplans.com. We also received $1.4 billion in coronavirus aid relief and economic security or CARES Act funding. This is important to know because as folks are looking at what's going on in the transportation industry, certainly hit hard by COVID. You may have this thought, where is NJ Transit? We've gotten support, thankfully, that allows us to continue to operate, not only putting trains and buses on the streets, but also continuing to move out contracts. That's very important for us. Lisa Marie Codrington, who's our Senior Director for the Office of Business Development, is part of a task force that is specifically looking to streamline and expedite our procurement process so we get contracts on the street faster while making sure you preserve and include opportunities for DBEs and SBEs. One major project we have coming up in the next year that is moving forward is our Poodle North Bridge construction project. This is a mega project. There's a lot I want to say about it. In the interest of time, I'll just say that this is over $1 billion project estimated. We have a 5% DBE goal on this, meaning that actually for this project alone, there's over $50 million in DBE opportunity. We are looking to have an outreach event that is a virtual outreach event that will allow for primes who are going to be shortlisted to network with DBEs in a virtual environment. And that's going to be built into how that process rolls. And again, you'll be seeing that later on this year. Also important to note that folks have talked about our service-disabled veteran-owned business program. Excited to share that we will be launching this program ourselves when it comes to our next quarter. We're looking to be able to get those types of goals on our contracts, and we're excited to be able to support those businesses as we've supported our DBEs and SBEs throughout the years. And finally, what are the three things that we think are important to share on occasions like this? The first thing to do is certify as a DBE, SBE, and SDVOB, especially if you're a business in New Jersey that meets those qualifications. It's worth it to certify. We in New Jersey Transit have gone to an online certification process using a system called B2G, where you can get in, maintenance your account, and also get regular communication on things that are happening at transit that are important to know as a business owner, as well as identify opportunities that you may want to participate on. The second thing to do is to show up. We're still running our pre-bid and pre-proposal meetings to learn about contracting opportunities. The preferred platform at NJ Transit is MS Teams, so make sure you download those applications, check our procurement calendar for upcoming events, and participate in those occasions. The third thing to do is to talk to us. We know in this economic environment, DBEs and SBEs may be having challenging times being able to perform, maybe having difficulties with their time, their primes in getting payments or moving paperwork. We're here to support you in all of those occasions. We at New Jersey Transit monitor our contracts ongoingly, just as our partners do at Port and DOT. We actually have regulations in our contracts, provisions built in that once we're submitted a contract, a DBE cannot be added, removed, or replaced without authorization from our Office of Business Development. So if you're having trouble, reach out to us. And so I'll wrap real quickly with the key takeaways here. We're still in business and excited about the future opportunities to do business with DBEs, SBEs, and SDVOBs, and hopefully in the not too distant future, MNWBEs. We have a strategic plan and capital plan that supports our goals. We're working with partners to ensure we have opportunities on upcoming contracts that are going to be expedited. We have a major contracting opportunity come up that's going to be $50 million worth of opportunities for DBEs on its own. Ensure your technology is up to speed so you can participate in virtual communication platforms. We will be looking to have those for ourselves for outreach going forward. And then finally, of course, certify, show up to our events, and talk to us if you need support. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And just in monitoring some of the questions, it looks like we have yet again been able to address many of the inquiries that are coming in. Let me just hit on a few that maybe deserve some clarification. So DBE and SBE, someone is asking disadvantaged business enterprise, small business enterprise. Someone is saying, how do we find out about contracts? You've addressed the portal and the certification process that can assist with that. Someone also asked, how do we prepare for another stay-at-home order? It sounds like with these virtual systems that are being set up, that is yet another means to make sure you're plugged in to the information that's still going to be flowing. The agencies are preparing for that, that reality as well. One last question that has come up that I want to just have be on Dr. Holmes' mind as she prepares to kind of bring us in for a landing here is this comment that some say that Black professionals don't actually bid. What people may not realize is that Black businesses believe that there is still a good old boy network in place. So as we come to you last, Dr. Holmes, I know your question is from this vantage point of the Department of Community Affairs and the adjustments that are being made to better represent the community that is being served. But if you could just bear in mind this comment, this reality that people still feel locked out, people feel closed out of the system. And as you wrap us up here, maybe you can give us some thoughts around how to deal with what we see as the ongoing reality of a lack of access.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone else. I do appreciate and understand that question, but I also think it ties into what Ms. Fields said about demystifying the process. Because what I have found in, reviewing applications and things like that is that we as a people, we have to get our stuff together in terms of looking at what is required and making sure that we fill out everything on time, every time, because you don't want what I call small things to knock you out of the process. So I do believe under our current Lieutenant Governor that we have opened up a wide cast, even right here at DCA. Is there work that still needs to be done? Yes, it is. So I just want to quickly tell you about what DCA does and how, when I'm listening to everyone, it brought to mind how Dr. King said that we're all caught up in an inescapable network of mutuality, and that what affects one of us directly affects all of us indirectly. So when I was listening to Dr. Ripolette speak about social and emotional well-being, and Ms. Fields talk about demystifying the process, and Manny talking about how 25% of all public contracts go to small businesses, and about education, training, and development, all of that ties into DCA because we have the Neighborhood Preservation Program, and we call it NPP. And NPP provides direct and technical assistance to municipalities to promote economic development. We also have the Main Street Program, we call it MPP. And MPP helps municipalities with traditional downtown to promote commerce and community building. We also have the NRTC, which offers an 80% tax credit to various businesses and all of that. And we have, so when I thought about what DCA offers, the other thing that came to mind is people need a place to stay. And they need to make sure that they have adequate heat. And they need to make sure, because if you're sending a child to school, and they got to walk through what I call the vicissitudes of life to get to school, that brings up what Ms. Fields was talking about in terms of safety. When you talk about how they get to school, what about what happens when they come home from school if they don't have the lights on, or if they're going to face eviction, and if, mom is there alone and maybe she doesn't have adequate housing, and that's where DCA comes in. And one
Oh, it looks like her screen may have frozen, unfortunately. Let's give it.
The state is having network issues right now.
Oh, is that right? That is unfortunate. Well, and because she was doing such a good job of tying together everything that we have been saying, and then also creating kind of a bridge into what DCA is doing around so much of this. Go ahead.
So while Dr. Holmes comes back, I like to add one piece to what Mr. Sanders said, which is how can you participate in these programs and these construction contracts? First and foremost, there's pre-qualification. These contractors, they have to become pre-qualified at the state level, and pre-qualified, let's say, to do work with us, they need to also become pre-qualified with the SDA. If you go onto our website, you can reach out to our procurement department, and they will walk you through the process. We have people that will walk you through. On a different note, there was another comment that said, they don't, these, minority-owned companies don't get jobs with the state. So what I have a good example, which is the McLeod Group. They've worked for us in the past. The company is owned by Robert McLeod. And I think will say the opposite, that he has been, he's worked really hard. He's, pursued work in New York City and New Jersey, and he's very successful as an organization, and continues to bid our work. So, pre-qualification, if I can drive that home, that's the way to get teed up right now when you have a low. But, there is an opportunity for success. Sorry, Dr. Holmes, I jumped in.
That's okay.
Back to Daria.
Okay, Daria, should I continue or no?
Yes, I would say if you could spend maybe the next minute finalizing your remarks. Yes.
Right. So everyone if you can encourage people to go onto our website to look up the rental assistance program, because I think that is what people need to know. And so also it's one of the, another point that I like to bring up is that the African American Chamber of Commerce can help with DCA in terms of continuing to do what you do by providing opportunities like this for all of us to come together and learn more about what we do and how we're all, what I say, interconnected. So we do have another way of demystifying the process, and that is with our interactive community asset map. So I would encourage you to tell people to go onto our website, look at that community asset map, because it'll give you a snapshot of what's going on in your area. So I know that time is far spent, so I wrap it up by saying that we're all connected together. Please look at our website because it will help you. I'll turn it back over to you, Daria.
Terrific. Thank you so much. And someone actually was just asking about where to find those resources. So thank you so much for highlighting that. This panel has been it's so prescient in knowing what the topics du jour should be based on what the audience was needing to hear, based on the themes that this conference or this summit is all about. I thank you for providing such a well-informed and rich platform for the rest of the conversations that will be taking place through the summit to build upon. Thank you so much, and I would love to turn this conversation back over, or the summit back over, to the chamber for them to proceed. So much to be done. Let's not lose sight of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Derrick.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone. Pleasure.
More than ever, we're here for our members. We're working hard to make changes that can help keep your family safe. Now more of your costs are covered, so you can get the care you need. We've made it easier to talk to doctors and nurses without leaving home, and those costs are now covered too. So much is changing right now. What isn't changing is our commitment to you, your family, and your health. Here when you need us most, now and always.
What is a community? A place you call home. But what happens when it doesn't look like home? It might look like we're standing apart, but we're all really standing together. Investors Bank has always been there for the communities we serve. We are committed to helping individuals, homeowners, and businesses with relief and guidance through these uncertain times. It's the character and strength to support each other that is what banking in your best interest is all about.
I first want to thank the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey, under the leadership of a great leader, John Harmon, for the opportunity to present to you all today. The African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey is a transformational organization fighting for African American businesses, fighting for equity, fighting for diversity and inclusion. My name is Reverend Derrick Green. I serve as Senior Advisor for Governor Phil Murphy, Senior Advisor for Diversity, Faith, Urban and Regional Growth. I'm honored to do so. In my role, I deal with many issues. Of course, issues related to diversity and inclusion and equity. I also have the honor of giving faith leaders an opportunity, a venue to impact public policy, and also issues related to urban and regional growth, particularly around underserved communities. I like to say that, and as a matter of fact, the governor brought me on early on in the administration to deal with issues related to systemic oppression, or like my son says, who is a 2019 graduate of Morehouse College, the intersectionality of racism, and racism in housing, racism or systemic racism in housing, systemic racism in healthcare, systemic racism in income, systemic racism in wealth, systemic racism in property taxes and where we live, in education. And so it's a broad scope, but needed. Similar to the African American Chamber of Commerce, which has its roots from the Negro Business League, started by Booker T. Washington around the turn of the century in the 1900. And I look at the comparison then and today, and like Reverend Joseph Lowry said, everything has changed and nothing has changed. And I'll get more into that in a minute. But I do want to just pause for a second and honor our brothers and sisters here in the state that have lost their lives, and the families have lost loved ones, friends have lost loved ones to this pandemic, this plague, the coronavirus. Over 13,600 lives we've lost here in New Jersey. And so our hearts and our prayers, our thoughts, our condolences go out to these families, to these victims. I have a prayer line that I told the governor that we were going to start every morning. And these are faith leaders and community leaders and business leaders from around the state that meet daily, 8 a.m. Every day, representing from Salem County all the way up to Bergen County. And we want the state to know that we've been praying for these families. We know these are tough times. People have lost jobs. People's businesses have closed down. But God has still sustained us, and we pray for his everlasting mercies. And then we put faith into action, making sure that during these times that people have information, updated information, so that they can make decisions to positively impact their lives. So for example, this year, or actually a few days ago, we were blessed to start the first African American testing site for this coronavirus and for the antibodies as well. That's huge because, and I know this is very important to those that are part of the African American Chamber of Commerce. We know that this virus has impacted Black and brown communities disproportionately more than any other communities. And so we are stressing the need for African Americans, Black and brown people, to get tested so that we can make sure that we are tracking the virus, and the best way to stop the virus is to know where it is, so that we can inform people on what to do to keep themselves healthy and to keep their friends and their family members healthy as well. But we're proud of that testing site at the St. Matthew AME Church. And it's no accident that is at an AME, the African Methodist Episcopal Church, which is historic for this country and their commitment to advocacy. And so this pandemic has hit us, but our governor has really taken the lead to ensure that New Jersey is doing everything we can in our power to keep New Jerseyans safe, to make sure that the virus, that we flatten the curve, and also to help us get to a point where we could slowly and responsibly recover and reopen. And so that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing now. We definitely know that this virus and this pandemic has hurt African American businesses. And like I said, particularly African American businesses, because many of our businesses, even before the pandemic, are marginalized. Even before the pandemic, are struggling. Even before the pandemic, are having issues with access to capital, with expansion, and all the issues that Black businesses have that the Chamber of Commerce fights for. And so during the pandemic, it is multiplied. And so we're putting programs. We're working very closely with John and the Chamber of Commerce, very, very closely with EDA, and also with our federal partners to do everything in our power to ensure that we are identifying the greatest needs, identifying what those issues are, and solving them in real time. And we could not do this. We could not do this without the African American Chamber of Commerce under the leadership of John Harmon. And we have a long way to go, but with that partnership, we've come a long way in the 3 years that this governor has been elected. I do also have to address what is happening globally in reference to what I call the protests for humanity. And we're seeing it around the world. George Floyd probably he would have no idea that his death would create these type of protests for humanity that we're seeing in England, that we're seeing in Australia, that we're seeing in Germany, where not too long ago, Hitler was trying to create a master race, and now they're marching against racism. Is just phenomenal. And what we're seeing in Newark, and the protests in Philadelphia, and the protests in DC, most of the protests that we see around the world are very peaceful protests, but they are resilient, they have resolve, and they are committed to change. And they are African Americans. You see Caucasians, you see Asians, you see Latinos, you see young and old, everybody pulling together to address the issues of systemic racism, not just in law enforcement, but systemic racism in our everyday life. And I'm proud, and I've marched as well. I joined the governor. And we marched in Hillside, New Jersey. A few thousand people in Hillside, New Jersey were marching for humanity, marching and saying together, Black lives matter, and Black lives do matter. And then we joined a young lady in Westfield, New Jersey, 16 years old. 16 years old. We joined her in Westfield. And she wanted to bring attention to the racism that exists in her high school, the racism that exists in her community, and the fact that many of her high school friends are saying that we are not, who are white, that we are not going to inherit your racism. And so she called the community of Westfield to come together. And a few thousand people came together in Westfield at the park there. and 98, 99% were Caucasian, and they said Black Lives Matter together. And I was so impressed with this young lady's ability to organize and to call people to action. And that's the spirit. That's what New Jersey is about. That's what we should be about. Coming together and addressing the issues of systemic racism. Dr. King stated that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And that's why I'm so proud of what I'm saying around the country. We have work to do in our home state. The governor, by the way, when is this going to be aired? Okay. The governor on June 19th delivered his second Juneteenth celebration speech. His speech on race here in New Jersey, what Black Lives Matter meant to him as governor. And the speech was absolutely transformational. And the things that New Jersey is doing, that this governor is doing, along with, in partnership with the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey, working together to address systemic oppression, systemic racism. And I want you all to know that are listening to this video that it didn't just start a few weeks ago when George Floyd was killed in the hands of police officers. It didn't just start when the brother Arbery in Georgia was killed. As a matter of fact, the fight to address systemic oppression and racism began on the first day that the governor was sworn in as governor of this state, and it has not stopped. And so we are very proud of the many things that we are doing to address systemic oppression in law enforcement, systemic oppression in housing, systemic oppression in our criminal justice system, and systemic oppression as it relates to access to education. And I'm very, very, very proud of the work that is being done. We are not, like the governor says, spiking the football. Oh no, we have a long way to go. We have a long way to go. The issues that have plagued New Jersey have existed for decades. And frankly speaking, there has not been enough culture busters like Governor Murphy, like Lieutenant Governor Sheila Oliver, to really deal with these issues. And unfortunately, those issues have not been addressed like they should have been. But leadership, when you are called to lead, you are then called to act. Leadership and action go together. And so I'll give you an example, something that we work very closely with the Chamber of Commerce on. And you say, well, does this have direct impact on business? It does. It does. Because too many of our brothers and sisters are caught up in the criminal justice system. Too many of our brothers and sisters have records. And they can't get jobs. They can't get contracts. They can't get loans. They can't get housing. And so we know that the 13th Amendment freed the slaves, but we also know that there was a clause in the 13th Amendment that permitted slavery if you are incarcerated. That permitted that type of, in other words, working without payment in as far as if you're incarcerated. And we know that the laws of this country, even the laws of this state, have been the catalyst for African American men and women getting caught up in the criminal justice system. But thank God that the legislature, under the leadership of Senator Sandra Cunningham and others in the legislature as well, passed the expungement bill, which over 1.2 million people will be eligible for expungement. And it, as early maybe as July, it was supposed to be July, but because of COVID, it may be delayed a little bit. But the law is passed. The governor of this state signed that bill. a part of what we call the Second Chance Agenda. And we're very proud of that. Not to mention that folks that are on probation and parole will have the right to vote. And those are two big pieces that have to do with the social justice, the social and economic justice ecosystem that we are promoting here in the state. And let me get back to the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey and why it's so important. You know, Booker T. Washington, who is actually your founder, John Harmon, being the president here for so many years, he knows that Booker T. Washington dealt with so many issues related to our community: education, housing. He dealt with jobs, job training. He dealt with the issue of black business all together. So these issues, like my son talks about the intersectionality of these issues coming together and working together, because you can't address one without the other. You can't address access to capital if you don't address the issues of education. You can't address the issues of education without addressing the issues of housing and where people live and how young people are educated. You can't. It all goes together. And that's why we are just thankful for the partnership and the commitment of the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey and this conference that it has every year that addresses the intersectionality of systemic oppression that impacts African Americans throughout this entire state. So we again thank God for this conference. We are at work every day. The team in the governor's office has been at work from day one. John Harmon and I met during the campaign with the governor on these issues. And so we are actively every day focusing on ensuring that we improve the plight of African Americans in this state. It is unacceptable that when you look at the median income of African Americans versus our white brothers and sisters, it is unacceptable that our median income is where it is. It's unacceptable that the wealth gap is where it is. And so we are working together to address those issues holistically so that African Americans in New Jersey can reach their full potential in a state that they help build. Again, in partnership with the African American Chamber of Commerce, I definitely want to mention some very important initiatives that we've worked on together. John and I and others with the Chamber have tirelessly worked on a number of issues. One being the independent prosecutor or independent investigations law. In the case of a police-involved police-involved death, where there's a death as a result of an action of a police officer, in New Jersey, which is only one of 2 states in the nation that has this law, where the investigation has to be independent. It must be conducted by the Attorney General, and the evidence must go before a grand jury. That is transformational, groundbreaking criminal justice reform legislation. And thanks to the legislature and, of course, our governor who signed the bill into law. This law was passed in early 2019, I believe, either late 2018 or early 2019. Again, long before the incidents that have happened, the death, the killing of George Floyd. I say this, that for other governors around the state that are now looking at these issues as issues of importance, congratulations. That's great. Thank you for joining. But there are those of our state in New Jersey under this governor understood the importance of this issue and working with groups like the Chamber of Commerce early on. And that bill is a bill that most other states do not have. And so we are thankful for the partnership of working together with the chamber. Another issue that we've been working on, and I've taken this on personally, the governor has asked me to look into this myself, and that is the issue of who we manage our money with. We need more African American money managers managing the state's money, and that's the bottom line. And that's one of the things that Lieutenant Governor Sheila Oliver and I talk about, and that is being culture busters. And we are working with the National Action Network under the leadership of Reverend Sharpton and Reverend Dr. Bartley and Cara Wallace. Cara Wallace is the subject matter expert nationally on this issue. And we are making headway, making improvements and progress in that area of who manages our money. I think that's very important, and not to mention the advocacy of working very closely again with John Harmon and the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey. And then lastly, one of the things that's going to help African American businesses is if the state could procure goods and services and set aside and use race-conscious programs to procure with African Americans and Latinos and use the race-conscious procurement process. We can't do that now because we do not have a disparity study, and you must by law have, by federal law, have a disparity study if you're going to have a race-conscious program. But the governor announced in his first 90 days at the African American Chamber of Commerce event back in 2018 that this state will do a disparity study. So thank God that we've brought on Hester Agadosi, who's our Chief Diversity Officer, and she's been charged and she's working diligently to gather the data needed for our disparity study. And I know that she is going to have an update on where we are with that process because that's extremely important. The governor announced it. He expects it to happen. And I know that that will improve the plight of Black businesses as it relates to doing business with the state of New Jersey. And so we are thankful for the partnership with the African American Chamber of Commerce. John has been a tireless advocate on these issues, working with me on a weekly basis to make sure we get this done. Black businesses are extremely important for the social and economic well-being of our state. Anything that we can do as a state to assist in that process, that we want to do that. So God bless you and thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Eric Poe. I'm the COO of Cure Auto Insurance, and I'm here to educate everybody that's watching this show on a practice that's being adopted by car insurers in the state of New Jersey. This is a practice of using income proxies, whether or not you have a 4-year college degree, whether or not you work in a high-paying job, or whether or not you have a above 700 credit score. Because those people are the ones that are getting the preferred rates in the state of New Jersey, regardless of whether or not they're good drivers or not. And this is a practice that needs to end. It's a crisis that's occurring for those people that most likely do not make enough money in this state. And those are the ones that are affected, are those people that are of people of color. So there is a bill that is pending both in the Assembly and the Senate in the state of New Jersey right now to ban the practice of education, occupation, and credit scores. We believe the African American Chamber of Commerce is doing the right thing by supporting these bills. And the numbers are startling. In the last 15 years since this practice has been allowed in 2003 and 2004 in the state of New Jersey, companies like Geico, who use your education, your occupation, and your credit score to determine your rates regardless of whether or not you're a good driver, have catapulted to be the largest car insurers in the state of New Jersey, collecting over $1 billion a year on car insurance premiums, while insurance carriers like Cure Auto Insurance remain the novelty. We need people to support this bill. We think the African American Chamber of Commerce is doing the right thing, and we think you as a viewer should support your legislator to support this bill. Hi.
Now more than ever, we're here for our members. We're working hard to make changes that can help keep your family safe. Now more of your costs are covered, so you can get the care you need. We've made it easier to talk to doctors and nurses without leaving home, and those costs are now covered too. So much is changing right now. What isn't changing is our commitment to you, your family, and your health. Here when you need us most, now and always.
What is a community? A place you call home. But what happens when it doesn't look like home? It might look like we're standing apart, but we're all really standing together. Investors Bank has always been there for the communities we serve. We are committed to helping individuals, homeowners, and businesses with relief and guidance through these uncertain times. It's the character and strength to support each other that is what banking in your best interest is all about.
Good morning, everyone. Certainly it is a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm filling in temporarily for my good friend, Mr. John Harmon, President and CEO of the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey. It is a pleasure to be with you. We have some great legislators on the panel today that will be answering the questions. What we will do first is to have all of our legislators to introduce themselves so that way everyone know who we are talking with. So without further ado, our great New Jersey legislators, please introduce yourselves.
Hi. Come on, Senator. Let the senators go first. Us assembly people will wait.
I'm Senator Tony Bucco from the 25th Legislative District, and I'm obviously happy to be here this morning to participate on this panel.
Hey, Senator Joe Panaccio, 26th District. Thank you for inviting me.
Hi, good morning. I'm Betty Lou DeCruz from the 26th Legislative District, which covers Morris County, Passaic County, and Essex.
Good morning. I'm Assemblyman Antoine McClellan from the 1st Legislative District, which covers Cape May County, pieces of Cumberland County, and a sliver of Atlantic County.
Staff for Communication Workers of America. I'm based in New Jersey, out of Trenton, and I'm coming to you live this morning from the mighty 37th District in Bergen County.
Well, it's certainly a pleasure to have everyone. So my name is again Lance Lopez. I am a community activist. I am a retired correction police officer from the state of New Jersey. And I retired in January. I am also an entrepreneur. I have worked in for Volunteers of America and Greater Works Ministry as a outreach coordinator for the chemically addicted residents here in the Mercer County area. So it is a pleasure to be here with you until my good friend John Harmon is able to join us. He had an emergency that he had to attend to. So we'll just jump in with some questions, and you can feel free to answer them. No specific order, but we'll try to get to every question that we have before we start to go to our panel. The other questions from the public. Our first question is, what legislations have been introduced to ensure the accountability from all those firms that receive transportation-related contracts and their outreach to identify minority and women as well as small businesses? And that's for our legislatures.
I'll go first. I guess I know of I think it was Senator Cruz Perez that introduced, I think it was 1182, which creates a division of minority and women-owned businesses to develop and state chief disparity officer. So with that, I think that allows to put something in place to have some efforts made for equal opportunity for people in purchasing with government entities, because there's a purchasing process that has to happen when you're dealing with the government, and that allows for more people to be involved in that way. And as far as I know, I don't think there's an assembly bill that's been sponsored with that yet, but that's the only thing that I know about at this point in time.
And I could follow up to Antoine, my colleague, as well. Look, the state has historically worked with trade unions, regardless of whether we are Republicans or Democrats in the governor's seat, to foster apprenticeships for young people. We have focused on minorities and women. We need to continue that relationship and build on those programs, improving them where we can. But the overwhelming issue for attaining employment, real jobs that can turn into sustainable opportunities for minority communities, is to make certain they develop and learn the skills required by industry clusters. We have to train people for the lucrative jobs that our industries offer. Not the type of job that disappeared during the last Great Recession, and we all know what happened there. One of the most troubling aspects of the coronavirus that has struck us right now is that it reversed nearly overnight the employment gains of the African Americans. We are hitting all-time lows in the African American unemployment levels. Now we have a greater proportion of the African American communities being more likely to lose jobs and income during this pandemic. So, making matters worse is they are most likely to have fewer resources to ride out the recession, given they have historically earned less and have had less ability to build wealth. While the historic problem was racial discrimination, we have a continuing problem with Black Americans accessing educational opportunities that lead to better employment opportunities. Studies have estimated, and this is very key and important, that only about 47% of African Americans graduates are proficient in science and math. That's key, and that cannot continue. We have to do better than that. We need a better accounting of how we are spending our educational dollars, because when you consider that the most heavily funded districts are where we seem to be failing these students. So something has to be wrong with how we are directing our resources, and that's been an issue that I have tried to discuss and have asked for the governor to do an audit, but I do serve on the Joint Committee for Public Schools, and this is a subject that we talk about all the time. So that's what I have to offer at this point.
Thank you. Yeah, I do think that the apprenticeship programs and the programs that are being developed in our community colleges now to address the changing job landscape are prime opportunities in this area. Also, the position of the Chief Diversity Officer in the Department of Treasury is working to make sure that public contracting practices are diverse and that the awarding of contracts to minority-owned and women-owned businesses are receiving equal treatment. And I think just at our last voting session, Senator Rice expanded the duties of the Chief Financial Officer, Chief Diversity Officer, and I know that Senator Panaccio and I both supported that legislation.
If I can, there's been two very specific bills that I've worked closely with, and I want to just tip my hat off to John Harmon. First of all, we started a regular caucus meeting, an outreach meeting with John Harmon and with the chamber, because quite frankly, we can't read your mind. And in the very, very beginning, John had indicated to us one of the issues that they had was bonding, getting surety for the small businesses, where they just needed a little bit of help. It's like giving that fishing pole to somebody, letting them learn how to catch their own fish, as opposed to trying to feed them fish all the time. That was a bill that took John Harmon and I 3 years to get through. I'm happy and proud to say that that was my bill. And John called it a game changer. So Governor Chris Christie at that time signed it, and now we have even more minority businesses involved. That was one bill that we did and that came to fruition. Now, the other bill that we're working on right now, and Senator Glucker had alluded to, is S-300. We're lucky enough to have gotten that past committee, so hopefully it can come for a full vote on the Senate. And what that would do, it would direct the Chief Diversity Officer to keep score. Right now, we don't know. We don't know how many awards, how many business awards are given, the percentage of the award, the amount that is given. So if we don't know where you want to go, you can't know where you want to go unless you know where you are right now. So if there's a need, we don't have any idea right now because we really don't have all that information collated. That bill, John didn't have to tell me to do. I actually had a quote in the paper by John where he's complaining that that information was not available. So I gave John a call. I said, John, all you have to do is pick up the phone and see if we can get this done. So we have drafted a piece of legislation, bipartisan in support. Senator Glucker had mentioned it. These are the type of things when we keep our lines of communication open between the legislative branch, no matter what party you are, and the needs of what the chamber is, because, again, we just can't read people's minds. There's certain specific needs that we just don't know, but where we can help, we're more than happy to help.
So I would like to also ask this question as far as the legislation is concerned. We all know that there's an issue with car insurance in the state of New Jersey, specifically amongst Black and brown New Jerseyans who pay an enormous price for car insurance. And it's based off of the credit report as opposed to their driving record. Do you support legislation that will lower the car insurance or have your car insurance policies and rates based off your driving record as opposed to your credit score in New Jersey?
I know that doesn't make any sense. That there's probably a lot of very wealthy people that are absolutely lousy drivers, and they should be paying more. I'm sort of in the middle of that cusp. Not very, very wealthy, but I'm not the greatest driver in the world. It's based on your record, okay? And as should everything else be based on your record, the actual actuality. If you're a good driver, then that should reflect in the premium that you pay.
I agree with the senator as well. So on that, on what you just asked.
Yeah, I think that's an easy one for me as well.
Absolutely. I'm 100% behind the senator's statement on that.
Good. Hello, this is John. Ladies, I really thank you for pinch hitting for me. And I can pick it up from here if you don't mind. I really appreciate it. We had an emergency. One of my good friends lost his son of of COVID, 34 years old, and I was able to get over there and pay my respects back. But this is a very important conversation. And you, ladies and gentlemen, have the wherewithal to put forth policy to make the state of New Jersey more equitable. And there's no better time than now to right the ship here in our great state. And I have relationships with each and every one of you, so we can have a very candid discussion here. And Lance just closed on the question about this auto insurance and people's credit score and occupation and education use of Prater in the state, which we all agree, formally or informally, is absolutely makes no sense. And so there is a bill that's being circulated, and I would encourage you all to find your way to get on that bill, and let's try to get it moved in the law. But let me pivot to my next question.
John, do you know the bill number? Excuse me, do you know the bill number?
I know Assemblywoman Guatana, I believe, is Quino, Assemblywoman Quino, I believe Boaz and Timberlake are on that bill. I don't have it before me, but I know.
We'll all look, but now we know who the sponsor is, so we'll know where to look.
Absolutely. So let's stay on that conversation. And again, forgive me if we've already covered the ground. And Lance is a long time friend. He stepped up and the pitch hit for me today. But so Senator Panaccio, he led a bill a few years ago on the bonding program, which will enable many small businesses now to participate on public contracts, which is great. And I think Betty Lou from the Assembly was one of the co-sponsors. So Senator Panaccio has S300 out on the street now. This is a bill wherein the state of New Jersey will report annually on its public spend. Again, there's no transparency in the state. This is not about playing I got you. It's about letting us know where we are so we can work to improve. So Senator Panaccio, I'm going to go to you, and then I'm going to go to Bucco and Antoine, Betty Lou, and Ms. Baker. I know she's not a legislator, but these are the types of bills that give people more access to a more equitable New Jersey. So, Senator Panaccio, if you could share with us a little bit about that bill.
Yeah, John, we had spoken briefly about it, but the first thing I want to publicly just state to you personally what a great job you're doing. That bill and the other bills are directly because of the efforts that you put in, our caucus meetings that we have with you, where you express what the needs are, because again, we don't know sometimes what those needs are. But this bill came because I saw a quote in a paper from you, John, and I don't know if you recall the S300 bill. That's the asking the chief diversity officer to just be a little bit more compliant and telling people of how many awards were given out, the percentage of awards, the dollar amount of those awards, because we don't know where we're going, John, if we don't know where we are right now. So if there's a need, we don't know what that need exactly is. But again, I read where you had that complaint, and they had quoted you in the paper, and I don't know if you recall, but I picked up the phone. I say, John, if you had that issue, why don't you give me a call, okay? And see if we can do it through regulations. Maybe we can just drop a bill in. So I'll give you the credit for the surety bill, okay? But I'm going to take the credit for this one. But the point is this. The point is that these communications, these forums that we're having, those quarterly meetings that we had with the chamber, because they are vitally important and they really do help. Now, I don't know if you have that in the Assembly, but that's something I would strongly suggest that being done in the Assembly, should be done in the Assembly also all these outreach programs, that way we can see what's on your mind.
Great. So, Assemblyman Bucco?
Yes. Hey, John, how are you?
I'm well.
I'm sorry to hear about your friend.
Yeah.
But, look, I think, we did talk about this earlier, and I mentioned it earlier. It's important for us, and important for the decision makers and the administration to know what the statistics are and where things lie. Because if you're right, it's not a gotcha type of situation, but it tells you how the state is performing overall. And I think that that's important and necessary. Because you shouldn't have to go searching for this information. This information should be readily available, because we do all support transparency in making sure that we have a diverse state and that the contracts and awards are diverse as well.
So good. So Antoine?
I'm not too familiar with the bill, but I'm going to support anything that one is going to diversify jobs and diversify businesses and help out and increase the fact that government can keep an eye out on these regulations that need to be met. So I would definitely support that, and I can look more into it. And if Assemblywoman Timberlake is involved or anybody else in the Legislative Black Caucus, then I'll gladly reach out to them and we can go forward with that.
Great. So, Councilwoman DeCroce and Ms. Baker, I'm coming to you, dear.
Listen, John, you know that I believe in communicating, and any kind of issue or bill that even the senator may be working on, maybe that's something that we all need to be more in tune with each other as to what's happening, because I'm not familiar with the bill the senator was speaking about. I don't think Antoine was either, but certainly working together, that's something that we would do, and I would do, John, you know that all the time, and it means opening up lines of communication so that we can better work together to accomplish the goals that are needed for everyone. And that bill number set, you make sure we have it.
Absolutely. So I will follow up. So Ms. Baker, again, I thank you so much for being with us today. And we have you amongst legislators. And so in terms of your capacity and what you do day in and day out to position men and women to have a better life here in New Jersey, what are some of the things that you've been an advocate for in terms of getting more equity and more benefit or more value to the people you represent that we could engage our listeners in today?
Thank you so much. I feel a little bit awkward because I really have no business on this particular panel. And it's very awkward to me because I'm not sure that you understand what it is that I do for CWA. I'm not in the bargaining unit. I'm not, I don't do representation. I work for the national. I design all of the issue and politically based campaigns that we do, and I also teach nationally for the different districts within the framework of Communication Workers of America. So I sent a private message to you and to our host that I'm always one that it's much better to wholeheartedly admit. I would have talked with Brittany if I'd known that legislation, I'm very close with her, but I'm not really comfortable with anything relevant that I do that would be included in this particular conversation. If we were talking about putting something on the ballot, to have a ballot question, yes, that would be something that I would design.
So let's talk about that. You respectfully, right? Respectfully, you represent men and women, and you position them, or you advocate on their behalf to make sure that policies address their needs or mutually beneficial. COVID-19, this whole pandemic, I'm sure has had an adverse impact on those who subscribe to your organization. And so what policies today, if you had the ability to put a policy or something on the ballot as a question or a referendum to be addressed, what would that be?
Well, specifically in terms of COVID, I don't know if your listeners realize that CWA represents the people who are no longer invisible that we call essential workers.
Okay.
So these were people that none of us recognized them as essential until we got into this pandemic and understood who's in the nursing homes, who are watching people die, their health is at risk, those types of things. I think everybody in this pandemic, including legislators and just everyday concerned people of goodwill, will admit we were woefully unprepared for this. And so there are some things that need to be done that transcends partisan politics, that take care of the health and welfare. Me personally, I moved home 4 years ago to take care of my 95-year-old dad. I was already getting groceries delivered because I live in Bergen County and I commute to Trenton. All of a sudden, nobody realized that those folks were our essential folks. When they talk about people dying in the nursing homes and veterans homes, the people that take care of those people, those are our folks. And the list just goes on and on. The janitors, the lunchroom workers, things go on and on. So I think that all legislators of goodwill would probably agree that we need to put some things in place so that we can take care of our people and not piecemealing PPE. We're not having discussions about that, but I'm in Bergen County. We were the epicenter of the pandemic of the state. So it hit here a little bit harder. I think that there was something that we worked on that, of course, did not make it out of committee, which would have been the ballot initiative for the constitutional amendment for the pension payments. There's a variety of things that we need to look at, but right now in these pandemic times, there's going to be a lot of suffering on all sides. And we're going to have to look those workers in their face, the ones that we considered essential, because we realize that the invisible people that we walk past every day, those people are going to be at the front in terms of what we're going to have to do, because you can't get a budget pass. There's no money. So there's a lot of things that will be coming up. And I just hope, even though I feel incredibly irrelevant in this particular conversation, and that doesn't happen often with me, I just hope that we act as people of goodwill as opposed to partisan and do what's right for the state of New Jersey.
So I respectfully disagree. I think you're very relevant to the discussion, and the points you made underscore the relevance of people that many deem non-essential, but because of the pandemic, they've been reclassified. And I think what you just shared with our legislators will make them more cognizant of this fact going forward. I think our respective experiences underscores our relevance, and you articulate it in a profound way today. So I'm glad you're here. So sometimes we may think we shouldn't be here, but I am very proud and encouraged that you're participating, because what you shared was, so you're speaking about many instances, the least of thee, right?
Yes.
Who are doing jobs that are underappreciated, jobs that really make all the difference in the world. To have someone care for your loved ones with the best care possible. But these people were put on the front lines, risking their lives in an area in which a lot of people lost their lives. So what you do is very important. And on the other side of this, I'm looking forward to having more engagement with you and the organization and see how we could be aligned on issues, particularly those representing people of color and brown people. So you stay there. I got more in the quiver for you. Just stand by. I want to put another question out there. Governor McGreevey, his first executive order was project labor agreements. And project labor agreements, in my view, was almost like the civil rights for the trades, like it was for Black people becoming a part of mainstream America. But the project labor agreement has really built the capacity for the trades in this state, has really given them a priority in many instances or preference. And we as blacks and Latinos and other groups and women and gays, we have to have a disparity study to get public contracts that our tax dollars are underwriting. So my question is, the threshold that I negotiated with NJBIA maybe 15, 20 years ago was $5 million. That meant businesses who were not in the trades, but were required to pay prevailing wage, could participate in public contracts up to $5 million. So my question to you all is that I would like to see a bill to move that threshold from 5 million to 20 million, so that more businesses can pay prevailing wage and get access to public contracts. When we look at the Port Authority of New York, the Newark Airport, New Jersey Transit, and I know those guys were on earlier, the school districts, black people are not getting their equitable share contracts, even in their own communities. Our mayors got to step up, our county executives got to step up as well. So my question is, the thoughts about raising the threshold from 5 million to 20 million, and we need someone to step up and lead that bill. Antoine, I'll start with you since everyone's looking at me. Like, all eyes on me. Brother Antoine, I'll start with you, and then Betty Lou, I'm coming to you next.
PLAs are always an interesting thing to fight with, and we just passed a bill for PLAs last week to move forward. But what I as far as moving from 5 million to 20 million, I would have to look more into that. But what I do know is we need to start educating, our black people more on how to get involved more with the with state contracts, and then also let legislators know that we need to reach out to the black communities and the black business owners to let them know that they should be involved more with the state contracts. So I feel it's a two-way street there, and it's tough just to pigeonhole it to one way with some legislation. I think we need to hit it on both sides, and I think that'll create a better and more fair atmosphere for everybody.
Well, let me say this, say respectfully to you. The atmosphere in New Jersey is not inclusive. I've been doing this 23 years with businesses all around the state, and I hear the term train, direct. We have businesses that are well-versed in their respective vocations and can put quality work. The challenge is access. So you go to some of the corporations, you go to some of the public agencies, and the first word out of their mouths are you a union? So what is the first word? Are you qualified, right? Do you have the capacity? Do you have the experience? And my response is, we have the capacity, we have the experience. We may not have as many businesses as others, but those that we have are well equipped to provide value for taxpayer investment. And that's what we do every day. And we will not put a business forward unless they can respond to those opportunities. But I thank you, and I'm working with people around the state, Senator Panache, the bonding bill, and technical assistance through the EPA. We're in our third year. This year, Senator, we have about 6 million in bonds. Last year we did 5 million. The year before was about 4 million. So we're making progress. Once the investments are put in the right place, we will get a state a good return on our investment. Assemblywoman?
Thank you, John. I agree with really everything you said and what Antoine was saying, and it shouldn't be if you're unionized. Are you qualified because you're a union? Look, if a company has the ability to to do a job, no matter how large it is, and they can handle it, then they should have the opportunity to be able to do it. And I think that door has to be opened. I think we have to push harder. And I had talked prior to you coming on about, you know, having skilled workers, minorities, making sure that we have them in the skilled positions that they need so that they can expand these companies and be able to take on these bigger jobs. So as Antoine said, you know, I would look at the 20 million and see how that fits into all of this and be willing to sit down at the table to be able to open the door to make these things happen.
Assemblyman Bucco, same question.
Yeah, thank you. I'm certainly willing to take a look at that issue. I can tell you that I just recently worked very hard, not on the bigger side of the range of these contracts, but on the smaller side. Some legislation got passed a number of years ago, a couple of years ago, that required anybody that was seeking to obtain a business registration certificate, public works certificate, to do work on public projects, to have an apprentice program. And many of the small plumbers, electricians, just one person businesses, own business, that have, you see them in their vans traveling around, that do work for our schools and our municipalities, that get called in for small jobs, but those jobs add up. We're being told they could no longer get the paperwork necessary to do those public jobs without the apprenticeship program. And then to get an apprenticeship program, many were being charged, you know, $9,000, $13,000 in order to be able to get the paperwork necessary to continue to do those small jobs in local government, for local government agencies. I was able to work with the Department of Labor to get a letter clarifying that those folks did not have to have an apprenticeship program in order to perform jobs that were under the bidding threshold and did not hit the prevailing wage threshold. So I think that put a lot of small businesses back on even footing again, and gave a lot of people the opportunity to get work that they were being precluded, because quite frankly, the unions are not interested in those jobs. They're not interested in going into a high school and, you know, working on a minor plumbing job. They're more interested in the construction projects and the building projects. So that's something that we need to look at also, to make sure that we don't discourage our small business owners, especially those in the minority field.
Yes, well, thank you so much. My folks are telling me that my volume is too loud, so I didn't make more folks away. Is that better? I feel like I'm on the quiet storm now. Senator Panaccio, if you would, sir. I don't want to sound like an angry black man, because I really appreciate our partnership with each and every one of you. So, Senator Panaccio, if you could speak to that
Sure.
labor agreement threshold, and then we'll pivot and talk a little bit about education and if there's any CARES Act resources out there that you all believe that we should leverage, and then we'll get into some more questions and
Sure, John. If I may, first of all, I heard with great interest that the bonding program that we started a few years ago has gone $4, $5, $6 million. That's a testament to your hard work. It also shows that it's working. Okay, those aren't handouts. Those bonding efforts mean that people actually being put to work and contracts are actually being gotten. So thank you again for all the efforts that you've done on that. I haven't been there 22 years, John. I think I've been there 19 years. But this is one of the first signs that we've actually heard that there's a concerted effort to actually increase the numbers, make them higher as far as the PLAs are concerned. Normally, they want to make them very, very low. They want to get rid of them. That's, you know, competing interests over here with some of the trades who are my friends, okay? They make a lot of sense in the fact that they employ a lot of people, they pay for benefits, they take care of their own pensions, and they usually get jobs on time and on budget. So hopefully this is a discussion, a bipartisan issue that we can get together and we can find out, maybe if not for all projects in the state of New Jersey, but maybe if we can zero in on those projects where we can lift the threshold, that way we can give more opportunity to the chamber and to the groups that they represent. I just want to echo Senator Bucco when he mentioned apprenticeships. I think that would be also, it's another parallel issue, but it's an important issue that leads into what you're saying. The more apprenticeships that we give to some of these minorities-based trades, then hopefully they also reaping some of those rewards, John. And then just finally, just want to just give a quick opinion on the COVID and the response that we had, because unfortunately, I don't think the response in the state should have been what it was. Is there any doubt that minority businesses were disproportionately affected? You shut down small businesses on Main Street, especially in urban areas. A lot of those are minority owned, and yet the Walmarts and the Home Depots, they're open. You know, thousands of people going through those every day. Stuff like that hurts, and stuff like that counts. I'm hoping that we do have eventually a Senate Select Committee with subpoena power. That way we can ask the administration, because keep in mind, the administration's basically had, they ruled, they haven't governed because they've done this also executive orders for well over 100 days now. So we want to make sure that what they did was proper, and if it wasn't, we want to be able to call them out. That way nobody, especially minorities, were hurt.
So let me switch topics a little bit, and I'm going to go to Ms. Baker. My understanding is that there are resources in the state that have not been fully leveraged that have come down via the CARES Act. And you talk about your workers that are in facilities that put them at risk. If you had your druthers, how could some of those resources be helpful to your workers? The PPE, other sources, testing, educational programs. We want to kind of be very broad in your response, because I'm sure there's resources that we have to spend by the end of this year. We're going to lose them. I believe I'm correct. So from that perspective, what are your thoughts about that, ma'am?
So I think that we need to be able to examine how those resources can best address what's going on. Me personally, I'm in Bergen County, which is an affluent county, and I'm not in an urban area. However, I think that because of how dire the situation was, and let's just be quite frank, I mean, there was not a lot of guidance in terms of what folks needed to do. So some things that had to be closed down in urban areas, in retrospect, we look at that because those areas suffered even greater because of lack of other resources in terms of hospitals and other things. So I think that we should hold judgment a little bit on that. I'm not exactly sure what's coming down in this new package. I definitely would like to see more access for those businesses that don't operate in mall environments, to make sure that it's explained to them, or how they could have recouped something, and understand that if they kept their staff on. We don't represent anybody that was affected there. However, our concern goes beyond our members, because although we might not represent those folks, these are still people that our members go to church with, go to synagogue with, go to masjid with. So it's an overall sense of being concerned about community. And the reality is, in the state of New Jersey and across the country, when it comes to larger businesses, whether it's something controlled by the building trades or something else, there isn't fairness and equity. And that's not a problem, I don't think, that can be legislated through. It has to do with whether or not people are going to be real and goodwill. I don't think you could legislate your way out of everything. That's just not real. And nobody in the community that I deal with, in terms of things that will happen for education, because there are people that don't know what they're going to do with their children this summer because they don't have the luxury. They've been going to work. It's not new. Education for me is everything. I'm the third generation to go to college. My brother and I, my father, who just passed a year ago at the age of 97, was the second generation, and my grandfather, the first, whose grandmother had been born a slave. So education is everything. So I'm hoping that some of those resources for those programs that we may not know a lot about, but makes a difference in small community settings, I'm hoping that we'll be able to educate people as to how they get that. We could point fingers and it makes us a little self-indulgent, but I'm hoping that we just operate on goodwill. I don't have to be of faith, even though I'm a person of faith, but I just want us to operate on goodwill so that the information is disseminated and it really gets to the people. And that's not a partisan issue. That's quality of life because we're New Jerseyans.
Well, thank you, Ms. Baker, and I agree with you in terms of you can legislate, but a lot is done with will. You get men and women in a room and you have a conversation about having common ground and equity for everyone, about fairness. Black people want to have the same, Dr. King said that in life, some folks have all the great things that America has to offer, and blacks have a double portion of all that's bad that America has to offer. We want to kind of make that a little more equitable going forward. And I sense that from you. So we got about 5 minutes left. So I need some rapid answers. And I was looking to grab some questions from the audience. One question, I'll start with the Honorable Antoine over there. Do you have any idea where we are with the state's disparity study? I know it was issued earlier this year. Has it been selected? Any thoughts around that?
I don't have any idea where we're at as far as the state with the disparity study, so I don't know where we're at with that. I know we had talked about a little bit in the Legislative Black Caucus, but I don't have an idea of exactly where we're at with that.
Gotcha. So we'll follow up with the governor's office and also over with our chief diversity officer. I think it's something that is long overdue. The fact that the state is doing it is encouraging, but time is of the essence. Dr. King said, "Why we can't wait? We can't wait any longer." Senator Bucco, in terms of STEM education, I'm grabbing a question here. Maybe it should have been asked earlier, but from an education standpoint, do you know, when you speak to STEM education in our schools, is it at the right age? Do we do enough of it? Would you encourage that we do more, getting our kids more focused on 21st century? That's a question that I have from the audience, and I'm trying to get it answered.
Well, I think the STEM education is critically important. And I think that while we haven't done enough of it, we are starting to move in the right direction and doing more of it. And it needs to start at the younger grades. And we've seen now that we're working on a project not only in the younger grades, but at the community college level, where this type of education is being put to use for the new manufacturing jobs that are coming online. And these jobs, which used to be looked at as maybe not as desirable, are now very lucrative. You're talking about six-figure incomes for these folks that are learning in this particular sector. It is certainly an opportunity for minorities and for women to get involved in these types of projects, and the pay is great. It offers a great opportunity and a great career, and could lead absolutely to folks owning their own businesses in the future. So I think that it's something that we need to focus on. We need to continue to build on, and we need to continue to make sure that everyone has access to those programs.
Well, listen, the time has come to an end. I'm gonna thank each and every one of you, Ms. Baker, Senator Bucco, and I said Assemblyman earlier, my apologies, and also to your family, the great work that your dad did in the state for a number of years, and now you've succeeded him as a senator, and we want to acknowledge you in that capacity and thank you for all you do to make New Jersey a better state for us all to live and work. Betty Lou DeCroce, we go back, you were kind of with me when we got the state organization going, and you've been right there ever since. And with your husband years ago, God bless, rest his soul. He was a good champion, a good partner for me back then, and you've stepped up and really been knocking the cover off the ball. The Honorable Antoine McClellan, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Presentation of the folks down in the southern part of the state. In many instances, those people are forgotten. But I have a lot of family down in the Bristol, Vineland, Millville area. My trucking days, Main Road, we hauled a lot of produce out of Vineland. So, you know, very, very, rather well, man. So I'd like to spend a little more time with you and figure out how we could do our part so you won't need a passport once you once you get out of Burlington County. So we need to fix that, man. We need to make sure that those people get the equitable representation. And Senator Panaccio, you've always been gracious in allowing us to come in and talk with your caucus, with Senator King, and we're just grateful. We're honored to be able to work with both sides of the aisle. Senator Sweeney has been a good partner, Senator Rice and Cunningham, and everyone in the Black Caucus. We thank you all for being a part of today's program. Our apologies for any of the technical difficulties, but I have to say, I have an amazing staff. They work long and hard to pull us off, and this is our first virtual summit, and it only get better from here. So thank you all. Thanks to our sponsors, and some great folks behind me. You guys are great, but behind me, that take us to the next leg in today's program. God bless you all, and we really appreciate your support. Thank you.
God bless you. Thanks, John.
God bless you, Mr. President. You take care.
Yep.
Be safe.
Good afternoon. It's good to be here and speak to you this afternoon and speak to the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey and to discuss where Black America and where Black New Jersey is today. Now, we know that as a result of COVID-19, our community has confronted greater obstacles than the rest of this country. We also know that the current discussions and the current protest of African American opportunities have raised a heightened awareness as to the challenges that we confront in our everyday life. While there are difficult times ahead of us, and we have experienced difficult times, I'm a big believer now that we're in a moment of great opportunity. For the first time since the civil rights movement of the 1960s, our agenda is at the forefront of discussions both politically and economically, not only in America, but globally. For the first time since the 1960s, our economic challenges and the unfairness of Americans' economy when it comes to giving opportunities for our community has been unfair, and that is now on the global front burner. This is a topic of discussion around the world, and now Americans and citizens from around the world are being educated on the extreme disparity. Because as you know, in the 1960s, during the Civil Rights Movement, television brought our plight into the living rooms of all Americans, and they got a chance to see water hose being sprayed on our children and our citizens, dogs being sicked on our people, people being killed, murdered, hit over the head with billy clubs, and so forth. And so those visual experiences and those visuals made America embarrassed, angry, and frustrated, and they acted by providing expeditious civil rights legislation. And the politicians, of course, responded, and the President of the United States did as well. And that moved us forward as a community, and we made significant progress. However, the economic burden and the economic discrimination that our people experience is much more of a silent killer, almost like cancer, because no one sees that. There are no visuals of that. There are no examples that people can see every day. They're numbers, and the numbers tell the truth, and now those numbers are being discussed. So for example, in 2019, the average household net worth for a black household in America was $17,000. During that same period, the average white household net worth was $171,000. A place where liberalism has the day and continues to be the dominant political agenda is the city of Boston. In the city of Boston, for example, the average household net worth for a black household is $8 compared to our white counterparts at $247,500. Those are dramatic numbers. Those show what I believe and what I refer to as economic apartheid against our people. Those numbers tell why our community has not made greater educational progress, and while we do not have home ownership rates. In fact, home ownership rates today for black households is lower today than it was in 1968. So we have a lot of ground to cover. Now, what happened with the presidential election in 2008 when we elected President Barack Obama, America said, okay, we are now in a post-racial society. We are now moving forward to another America. And so our agenda of economic empowerment kind of lost a little bit of steam because America said, well, you've had an African American president who's been elected twice, and so there is no reason to believe that there is any more discrimination. But the reality is that there was, is, and continues to be, and we know it. What we see now, though, is our young people taking to the streets, and they're saying this is unfair. And they're joined by whites, Hispanics, Asians, and all Americans throughout the country because they all recognize that the system is unfair. And what they're also seeing is that the same unfair system that is bared upon our people will bear upon them and is bearing upon them, and they are seeing fewer economic opportunities. But I believe that we are embarking on a place where there will be far greater opportunities for African Americans in the future. And they will be economic opportunities, which I believe is the last frontier of the pathway to true citizenship and true equality here in this nation for Black Americans. Now, I happen to have grown up during the 1960s. I was born in 1960. I can remember when Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated and seeing my city, Washington, D.C., having riots and the community that I lived in being damaged and destroyed by riots. And then I saw what happened after the 1960s and after civil rights legislation and after our agenda was at the forefront of discussion in America. We went into the 1970s where African Americans gained political power in places like Atlanta, Detroit, Washington, D.C., Chicago, and other places to create an economic environment for Black businesses to start and grow. And that continued from the 1970s throughout the 80s. In the 1980s, when we look back on things, we can look and see that the 1980s were the best time to start and build a black business. And if you look at African American entrepreneurs who've experienced significant success, most of us were born in the 1960s. And that's because we were able to get the benefits of the civil rights movement and the protests that went along with fighting the second-class citizenship that our people were dealt. So I want to share a little bit about my story, because I think that my story is indicative of, I think, the great possibilities in this country and those possibilities and those opportunities that exist today. So I was born, as I said, in 1960, grew up in Washington, D.C., and in my last 2 years of high school, from 1976, when Jimmy Carter became president, to 1978, I had the great opportunity to be a page on Capitol Hill. So I was a page on Capitol Hill and then an intern for legendary Congress members, Ron Dellums of California, Charles Rangel of New York, and Congressman John Conyers of Michigan. And I had a wonderful experience. My day was very interesting. I went to school from 6 in the morning until 10:30. The school I attended was on the top floor of the Library of Congress. And then I walked across the street to the United States Capitol, where I went to work all day. I also played sports and was on the chess team and so forth. And so I had extracurricular activities. I got home around 9 o'clock, 9:30 generally, and then did my homework, went to bed at midnight, woke up the next morning at 4:30 because school started at 6 a.m. in the morning and ran from 6 a.m. to 10:30. And so it taught me time management, and it showed me role models who were elected to Congress, who were leading the charge on the fight for equality for our people, and that I saw the great opportunities that lie ahead. So I went to New Jersey, to Rutgers, for college, and after my first year of undergraduate school, I decided I didn't want to pursue a career in medicine, so I went back to Washington, D.C. to go work in the real estate business and go to school part-time. And started working in the real estate business, and it was a horrible time to work in the real estate business. It was 1979, and interest rates were about 22%. So I could get somebody, I could sell somebody a house, but I couldn't get them to qualify because interest rates were absurdly high, 10 times what they are today, for example. And so it took away the buying power of most people. But I wasn't discouraged. I continued to pursue my career, and I also got engaged in politics. And at that point in time, the mayor of our city, Marion Barry, who was elected in 1978 on a platform to empower our people economically, was building a black business infrastructure. He required that 35% of all cities' contracts, all the city's contracts would go to minority-owned businesses. And back then, what minority-owned businesses meant were African-American businesses. And so he got reelected in 1982. And in 1983, I got appointed to the Property Tax Appeal Board. And that is a board that hears the assessment appeals of major property owners or all properties in the city of Washington and determine whether they're valued properly by the assessor. So that board, by its actions, reduces or increases or sustains a person or a company's property taxes. So I did that and began to build my real estate appraisal business and opened my own business in 1983 at 23. So I was an ambitious person, and I sublet a portion of my office suite. I got more office space than I needed with the expectation that I would fill it later. And I sublet some of the space to real estate brokers. So one day in 1986, I'm sitting in my office, and one of my subtenants comes in and tells me he's got a property for me to buy. Now, he knew I was interested in getting into the development business because I'd made it known I wanted to do a development deal in downtown DC. And at that point in time, no African American had developed a major building in downtown Washington, DC. So that was something I wanted to do. And so this broker comes in and shows me information on a piece of property, not in downtown, but in Anacostia, one of the most economically neglected communities that was damaged by the riots of '68. And the mayor of Washington had targeted for economic redevelopment. So I said, why in the world do I want to buy this property? And he showed me a letter, and it was a letter on the mayor of Washington, D.C.'s letterhead addressed to another developer. And that letter indicated that the city was willing to commit to leasing office space from that developer on a site in Anacostia at 2100 Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue, and they would lease it for lease office space for 20 years. So that commitment to lease would guarantee the profitability of the building that would be built. So it was a pre-leasing of a building yet to be built, thus ensuring the profitability. But one problem, the developer did not control the site that was going to be developed. That was he was negotiating with the owner, long-term owner of the property, and they were haggling over about $150,000. And that's where I came in. So my broker friend and subtenant told me that this is, a deal I should look at. And I figured, well, if the mayor were willing to lease space from this developer, a white, larger developer, why wouldn't he lease from me, a Washingtonian African-American developer who really did care about the community where the building would be built? As a result, I met with the seller of the property. I enlisted the support of a couple of real estate developers who I knew, who we had pursued another development deal together where they were going to put up the money, use their track record. I was going to do the work and find the deal. And so as a result, we joined forces. We purchased this site, and ultimately, after some fireworks, where the developer on the losing side leaked the story to the Washington Post to try to add greater scrutiny on me because I was younger, black, and a political supporter of the mayor's. None of that worked. I ended up getting the lease signed and executed, and then built the building. And my partners and I completed the building in 1989, about 9 months prior to our deadline to complete it, and under budget. And that building the city occupied for 20 years. Then they renewed it when another mayor renewed it for another 10 years. And now it's been renewed for 16 more years. And we're renovating the building right now. We're just about complete with the renovation of that building. But that was the beginning of my real estate development career. And I got that opportunity because of the political environment I was in, because the mayor of the city was committed to economic empowerment, and the timing was right, and I was willing to work hard and take some risk. That one building cost $10 million to build, and it was 100,000 square feet. We went on to build more projects in Washington, D.C., hotels and office buildings, and warehousing spaces and retail spaces, and went on from there to building hotels and condos and office buildings in Miami, Florida, and then around the country. And so today my company has a development pipeline of about $4 billion in terms of project costs. Our projects are in Boston, New York City, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Charlotte, North Carolina, Miami, Florida, and downtown Los Angeles. We are one of the largest entrepreneurial developers in the country, and we have completed the development of several billion dollars in projects. All of that started because I got the one opportunity in Washington, D.C. And so what the lessons are from that experience is that what's on the agenda matters. What's on the focus of the public matters, and having leadership in power that is committed to economic empowerment, that matters. And those things, when combined, create great opportunities for African American entrepreneurs. And so we must be engaged politically. We must have an expectation that the politicians fight for our economic opportunities. And we must be prepared to think big and be innovative. And I would say that that has been one of the keys to my success. And so if we look at where we are today, it's, as I said earlier, it's very similar to where we were in the 1960s, a time of great opportunity. And now we can capitalize on that opportunity. We can build our infrastructure. We can build our businesses. We can provide better education for our children. And we can focus on creating a better life for our people and for ourselves and our families. My company, by the way, my success, while enjoyable and pleasant for me and beneficial for me and my family, should have meant more, and I was taught that it needed to mean more. And so I engaged in what our company calls affirmative development. So for the 35 plus years that we've been in the development business, we have focused on creating an environment of opportunity for minority contractors, vendors, consultants, and the like. And throughout our company's history, 25% of all of our contracts have been provided to minority and women-owned businesses. Now our goal nationally is 35% for all of our projects in every market we do business in, because I'm a big believer that the economic benefits derived from economic activities should be reflective of the demographics of the populations who live in those communities and who care. And so I think it's very critical that when we look forward with a sense of commitment that we are going to focus not only on making our own businesses successful, but also bringing others with us, creating opportunities for others. That is what we must do better. We must acknowledge that as African American entrepreneurs, we need to do more. We need to bring people together more. And that is the key, I believe, to where we are in this moment in time. And I think that as I close, I want to remind you that we are living at a time of great transition and great opportunity. And if we seize this moment, we can move our people forward and put racial discrimination that economically oppresses us in the background and in our rearview mirror. We will not end racial discrimination, but we can get rid of the symptoms and the byproducts that racial discrimination causes and inflicts on our people, such as economic disparity, poor education for our youth, and poor health care for our people. And so I want to leave you with a message of optimism and sense of purpose, that now's our moment. This is our time. And let's all work together to capture this moment in time. Thank you. Have a great afternoon, and thank you for listening to me.
So this is a milestone, our 10th annual Gala. Although we've been in business a little longer than that, this is our 10th annual, the largest turnout to date, more sponsorship, more people who had never been here before, and many of them came up to me at the conclusion and said, hey, how do we get involved?
Membership has its privileges. My relationship with the chamber, my relationship with John Harmon, the president and CEO, is amazing. You could not ask for a more outstanding leader and a person who's going to go to bat for your business.
When we look at the tale of two cities, we flip the coin high in the air, there's great positive things, but also great negative things. And we have to be able to change that with a business agenda. When you look at 2020, there are some negative things that are happening we must change from an economic perspective. In 2020, you will see, for the first time, children making less money than their parents. 40,000 people a day going to blood banks, selling their blood for $40 a pop. 500 of those plasma centers not even owned by Americans and selling your blood internationally. We've had washer and dryers in the school because kids are coming to school soiled. You're having professors that are on food stamps, people not being able to afford living next to their own jobs. We have a problem economically. And the first words in my book, Wall Street to the Hood, if you don't understand capitalism, you're a foreigner in your own country. Learn the language. Business is a language. So if we're going to look at creating black wealth through black business, we must first understand the historical perspective of black business, look at the present day of black business and the future, and I'll share that with you. You have the same DNA of those who came before us in black business. Dr. Julia Walker from the University of Austin, Texas, has an encyclopedia on black business. We had to be strong if we were able to buy ourselves out of slavery. You have the same DNA of Jeremiah Hamilton in 1864, one of the first black millionaires in this country. The brother was worth $2 million in 1864. Vanderbilt said, I don't like him, but I respect him. And he had so much swag that he sent you caviar and champagne when he did a deal with you. Paul Williams, you have the same DNA. Paul Williams was the architect of the stars. But they didn't want the brother sitting next to him. He couldn't live in Beverly Hills. He didn't complain. He learned how to draw upside down. You have the same DNA. It wasn't Jackie Robinson who was the first African American in Major League Baseball. It was Moses Fleetwood Walker, who in 1894 caught 3 years without a mitt. The brother got arrested for murder, and his brother, who was a lawyer, got him off, and he created 6 patents. It wasn't Tyler Perry or Spike Lee. You have the same DNA as Oscar Micheaux in 1933 from Iowa, who went to 400 movie theaters owned by African Americans and turned around and sold it back to them. You have the same DNA as Annie Malone and Madam C.J. Walker, way before the Pink Lady and Mary Kay, creating products to sell around this country. So if you have a historical perspective of black business, we can then create a platform to move our agenda forward. And in doing that, we must have a black business agenda similar to what you all are doing here with the African American Chamber of New Jersey.
And there's a little known story and figure in black history about a gentleman by King by the name of O.W. Gurley. By show of hands, who here is familiar with O.W. Gurley? About 3 of us in the room. O.W. Gurley was a Mississippi entrepreneur who in 1905, just 35 years after the enslavement of African people in America, O.W. Gurley moved from Mississippi to a small town in Oklahoma called Tulsetown, which is today known as Tulsa, Oklahoma. In 1905, O.W. Gurley purchased 40 acres of land, similar to that 40 acres and a mule we were expecting. He went and purchased the 40 acres his damn self. Because of segregation, O.W. Gurley was not allowed to sell that land to anyone of European descent or white people in America. He was forced to sell to other black people. So he partnered with Simon Berry and J.B. Stafford, and he began to develop that land. And from 1905 to 1921, O.W. Gurley and his cohorts built up 36 square blocks of over 2,000 homes and businesses, which we call, in this modern era, Black Wall Street.
I'm Ralph Weaver, the founder and CEO of East-West Connection. And when I introduced myself earlier, I said a meetings and events planning company. You probably said, okay, well, what does that mean? It's all the logistics, the behind-the-scenes work to make a meeting happen. So everything from the travel to the content development to getting hundreds of people there to the slides that appear, the directional signage, finding the venue. I have a team of 75 people that are based throughout the United States, and that's what they do. And I'm proud to say we've been doing this for 29 years, working with some of the largest companies in the country, such as Johnson & Johnson, CSL Behring, Celgene Corporation, where we had the honor of having master services agreement with them. So it's interesting, my relationship with the Chamber. For years I'd heard about the organization, and you know how when you're so busy involved in your business that you don't step back and say, okay, what am I doing to truly grow my business, especially when you have a client base that's sustaining you. And so I was in the business, and I got involved over the years in different organizations, and I would go to different seminars that SBA did or different chambers and other organizations. And then I said, okay, well, what am I getting from those organizations? So I stepped back for a while, still running my business. And one of the things that I learned was that we were the best kept secret. Other than our clients, no one else knew about us. So I knew I needed to change that if I wanted to grow the business. And we came up with the 2020 vision for our organization, how we're going to double our revenue by the year 2020. And this was in 2017 when we decided to do that. And a person by the name of Mona Terrell, she's a public relations person. Over the years, Mona had said, you got to meet John Harmon. You got to meet John Harmon. And you know, you listen, it goes in one ear, out the other. And then one day I said, no, I do need to meet John Harmon. And that was really one of the best things that I've ever done in my business. And this was about 6 months ago. So when I met with John, I had a meeting at the Chamber's headquarters. And John was very candid. He just said, okay, well, what do you want from the Chamber? Tell me about your business. As he mentioned earlier, we filled out that profile. And so when I met with him, he had a very good sense of what I was trying to accomplish. But he asked me, who are the 3 clients that you're trying to connect with? And he listened, he asked some other questions, and then he said, I think we can help you. And you know, you listen. But then what I found out, that John was truly a man of his word. That next week they had a meeting in southern New Jersey because he said, I want you to meet someone that I think may have an opportunity for you. The state is getting ready to organize this big conference for 1,200 people, and you got to meet this person. Her name is Hester Agadosi. And I said, okay, I'm in Hunterdon County, so to go to southern New Jersey is like a 2-hour, in rush hour, more than a 2-hour drive for me. So I get in my car, I go that next morning, and Hester was one of the panelists on the at the presentation. And so I go up and I introduce myself to her, and she started to tell me about this meeting that she's organizing, and they have an RFP for it. So she said, give me your card, and someone from my office will get in touch with you. I did that. We got the RFP. We went online, we completed that, and we were awarded the business. So that was just incredible. And that was a meeting for 1,200 people that we did. And what it did for our organization, it gave us that exposure to not only companies that we've been working with, but a statewide and national platform for our organization. And that was the best endorsement ever. Then John said, okay, how are we doing at that meeting? And we started talking, and he said, okay, I think that there's some more other people I need to meet to connect you with. Mike Taylor, who's very involved in the organization. Mike Taylor has a contract, and I'm drawing a blank on the name of his company. Yes, but he has the contract with Johnson & Johnson. And if any of you know the whole world of Johnson & Johnson, it's like 55 operating companies under this one major company, and they all operate independently. So after that introduction, Mike and I were talking, and he said, okay, well, I know some people that you need to meet. And so it was truly about the networking that he got me in touch with people that I did not know about at J&J, from Bev Jennings, who has since retired, but other people in that organization, and it started that dialogue that continues today. Another success story, I got an email, I think it was from, I don't know if it was Jacqueline, I'm not sure, but someone sent me an email from the chamber saying, look, we have someone with Corteva that John met with at an event. And this person wants to find out about different organizations within the chamber and what they're doing. And one area of interest is in the meetings and events industry. So they said, send us a capability statement. I did that. And within 24 hours, I got a response directly from the person from Corteva, which used to be a division within DuPont. That's now a separate organization from them, but it just started really growing. And as a result of the connection that John made for me with Corteva, I had a meeting right before the reception that the chamber had a month ago. And this was probably the best business engagement that I had. When you have a new business presentation, I thought it was, you go in, present your capabilities, 30 minutes later, that's it. That meeting lasted 90 minutes. And to have that opportunity to tell someone in procurement and supply diversity what your company does and to give that story, that was just incredible. And so I was at NMSDC, the meeting in Atlanta last week. I saw the person again. She introduced me to her boss, and she said to her boss in that introduction, this is the gentleman that I met at John Harmon's meeting, and we're going to work with them. And I'm like, okay, I like that. And so again, it's all about those connections that I have made through the chamber. And I can't say enough good things about the chamber and what it's meant to my business, because in working with other organizations, people will say, fill out the information on that database, give me your card, and nothing else happens. But it's been a wonderful investment in terms of what that partnership, and I'm looking for ways how I can help the chamber in terms of supporting different events, because it is a give and take. And tonight there was another organization having a meeting, and I looked and I just had to evaluate to say, wait a minute, the chamber is where I need to be because they're partnering with me. The other event, yes, I could put on my tuxedo, but it's just a tuxedo experience. When I leave there, there's probably no connections that I've made other than people that are giving me lip service. So I thank John, I thank all of you, and that's the EWC story and our partnership. So I would encourage all of you to get engaged, to attend the meetings, to network with one another, and as Greg mentioned, yes, met with him, Mike, others that I've been talking to, and you never know where the opportunities and the possibilities are. Oh, yes, and this was on the 19th when Crossroads Theater event had a wonderful event honoring Denzel Washington. EWC was one of the corporate sponsors. And so, and I know the chamber was very involved in it as well. And you just never know the mutual people. Anthony Carter, who was with Johnson & Johnson, was there. John came to the reception that EWC, and Jacqueline came to that reception that we hosted. So trying to bring different people together, and it was just a wonderful experience. So again, the exposure for East-West Connection. So hopefully a year from now, people aren't saying, well, who is that company? Because our name was there in terms of one of the corporate sponsors through the work we're doing with the chamber. When it is supporting an event, our name is there. And it is all about the name recognition and what your brand stands for. So what we're doing is we're out here, I'm promoting our business, but we deliver what we say we're going to deliver. And I'm just proud of what we've accomplished over the last 29 years, that we're $12 million in revenue and going strong. And so hopefully when I'm before you in a year from now, that we'll reach that 15 to 20 million mark. So, and I know we can do it with the support of the chamber. So thank you.
So one, I want to thank Jacqueline and her team for reaching out to me to say a few thoughts on, talk about my experience here. And I'm an avid reader, and I love quotes that inspire me. So James Baldwin said, those who can't do it or say it can't be done are usually interrupted by those who are doing it. And that's how I would describe John and his team. I joined December 28th, 2018. It's almost, well, I'm not gonna put on the same level, but it's it was a spiritual experience for me. And I say that because I'm coming up on my first year anniversary. I was in financial services and technology. I was an infrastructure manager. I recently took on a new role with the Royal Bank of Canada, right downtown Jersey City from where I live. It was absolutely perfect, great money, the whole nine. And I got there and it just wasn't for me. And I'd started my business Dynamic Digital Layer, which is a digital signage company, in 2013. I heard about John in 2014. And I didn't think I was ready to join his chamber because I just didn't think so. So fast forward to 2018, it was Michelle Richardson, who is the executive director of the Hudson County Economic Development Corporation, that really urged me to go and meet John. Well, within a week, John was meeting with me in Newark, asking me, how can we help? We're here to help. We're here to support. And so fast forward, he got me involved with the bonding program. And I gave you a story in terms of the role that I took on, and the new role, or the role I just resigned from, because I was working full-time and still trying to build my business. And then it just got to the point where this year, as a matter of fact, I resigned on my last day was October 4th of this year. And right before I resigned, I was in, I had a lot of trepidation. And I think I called John like 7:30 in the morning and told him what I was gonna do. And I'm like, I'm scared. And he asked me, did you pray about it? I said, yes, I did. And he said, then you're good. Just do it. And I would say from that point, it's been about 3.5 weeks now. It's been tremendous. I finished the bonding program, which was huge. I thank you for that, John, huge. And I'm certified. I have every certification. I'm going to talk to the gentleman that just spoke about the port. So it's been through that mentoring, that support system, and not just from John, from his whole team. And it's not about contracts are going to fall in your lap. I attend these events. Even sometimes when there were the golfing event, I could not attend, but I bought a ticket. What I should have done is told you, give that ticket to someone. I'll do that next time. But I bought a ticket because I wanted to support the chamber financially, even if I couldn't be there, right? And those are the types of initiatives and self-initiatives that I've taken on, and I've really benefited. I love the email blast. That's how I keep up with things. There's absolutely no way that I can know everything that's going on. There's no way. So those email alerts that come out several times a week, I encourage each and every one of you to read those, right? Go through them. I can't attend every event, but the events that John, like the business forum that we just had, excellent, excellent. How many people here were there recently? Yeah, the BLC, yeah. Well, if you weren't there, you missed something good, really good, right? And I just encourage you to go. When I first started my business, I did not understand those types of events and the importance of it, whether the chamber is directly putting it on or the chamber is sending out a blast for us to be here, to be there. Building your business is completely built on, it will be built on relationships. You will be the go-to person. You will become the preferred vendor. And if you don't attend the events and people don't see your face, and I wouldn't say that I'm a social butterfly, because I'm not, but I have to go. I have to come out of my comfort zone and just attend these events. And it's through that level of communication networking that I've been able to grow my business in under a year at this point. And that's through the support of the chamber. John has connected me with key people in Trenton. I live in Jersey City. I wanted to do a project in Jersey City, and I got beat out of it. And I came to John with my tail between my legs, and John said, don't worry, come down to Trenton. I'm going to introduce you to the right people. And he has. The gentleman that spoke right before me, yes, John is a rainmaker, a change agent. He's it. he's it. And there was a woman that, Ms. Rodriguez, she was from the MTA, and I think the one thing she said, John, that really stuck with me, and this was at the BLC, she said, we're in a unique time, and that's why I walked away from my job. I walked away from a six-figure, very lovely salary to do this. This is scary. I have no income, so I have to be on my grind every day. But she said something that was key, which is why you need to be at these events. She said, we're in a unique time where diversity is the buzzword. Diversity is what everyone's talking about and all these programs and opportunities. But this is what she said, we don't know how long this is going to last. We don't know how long this is going to last. And so if we're not taking advantage of these opportunities, there is absolutely, positively no one else to blame but ourselves, period. I was at another event recently, and it was, the turnout was absolutely poor. It was less than 100 people, and it was for an opportunity for minority businesses. And unfortunately, we're just, and I'm not here to browbeat us, right? Because I'm a part of the community, so it's not that. It's a matter of changing our mindsets, right? Leveling up, stepping up our game, right? You know, that's it. That's really, really it. And stepping out of the stereotypes, educating ourselves about whatever our business is. When I'm coming to John, it's not John's responsibility or the chamber's to figure out what my business strategy should be, or my approach or my methodology. That's my responsibility. So that when I'm coming to John and his team in the chamber, I'm coming strategically. I'm asking focused questions so I can get the results that I'm looking to get. And that's it. But the first step is showing up. If you're not there, you're going to miss it. No one's going to share it with you because the person's going to, like tonight, you know, why should I go back? And this is not selfish. This is not selfish. But if I made the effort, and other people that came from up north, and some of you have come very far, we made the effort. It is not the responsibility of John's team now to, they're videotaping this to put it on their website for everybody to get the webinar playback. No, make the effort. And it says everything about you to the various agencies, the various businesses that we're trying to engage with, to say, hey, they're here. The first thing, and this, I keep hearing this over and over for the last year, you must show up. You must show up. This chamber has a wealth recently, so I went on, and you must fill out your profile. Whoever's not, how many of you have your profiles filled out? Complete? Total? Okay, that's pretty good. That should be a question, actually, if it's not. Just asking. The reason I'm saying that is because I went on to mine. Right, so when I joined, and what's really great is that the cannabis, that's a whole new space for us, you know, well, for people, period, whether it's African American or not, it's a brand new space. So make sure that trade is listed as a category on their website, because they didn't have my category. So I emailed Jacqueline, and I said, you know, how am I going to get business if I'm not properly categorized? Immediately. She had that changed in 48 hours. And it was only 48 hours because I called right before there was some other event you were having, and they responded back to me and said, well, we can't do it right now, but we're going to do it only because we have another event, right? And I'm mentioning that in terms of the responsiveness that I've experienced as a result of participating in the chamber. And John has connected me with the Port Authority, with MTA, PSENG, Burns McDonnell. I could go on, right? But it's my responsibility to build on that introduction, to build on that relationship, come back to John, the project that I'm trying to put forth in Trenton. I was just talking to him about it. You know, here's where I am. What should I do? And he just right in the hallway there, he just, well, you know, talk to this person, and this is what you need to put forth to them. So that level of white glove treatment and support, you get in this chamber. And I think to your point earlier, one of our colleagues, we're not paying half, not even close to what we should be paying for what potential opportunities we can reap. Absolutely not. And I mentioned what Ms. Rodriguez said from the MTA. I mean, they're throwing money at small businesses, small minority businesses. If you're not certified, you know, if you're not even going after biz, this gentleman here, I'm coming to talk to you. And I'm not coming to talk to you, I'm coming to talk to you because you've now walked the road I want to walk, right? So I'm not looking for you to run my business, I'm just looking for you to be able to help shepherd me through a process that I'm not familiar with. And that's it. And then building relationships from there. So I'm not going to be long-winded. I'm sorry if I'm sounding preachy. That is not my intention. I just want to say that I'm not being paid to say this. The chamber is it. It's what you make of it. It's just like we have one. I wake up every morning. I have one life to live. One. And tomorrow's not promised to me. I would hate to be on my sickbed or deathbed and think about what I should have done or what I could have done, and I didn't do it, and then probably think about the reasons why I didn't do it, and those reasons will be inadequate. So wherever we are today, it's a result of the choices we made. Each one of us have 24 hours. It's not mine. It's not political, but it is in his book. So Donald Trump said in The Art of the Deal, we each have 24 hours in the day, each one of us. The difference between my success and your success is what I do with my 24 hours. That's key, right? I don't even watch television. Television is a zip. It's a time waster. It's a time waster. And we have no more excuse. And that's for everyone, right? So I can just, again, strongly encourage you to join. John has a fantastic team. I love Jacqueline and company. Come to the Gala next year. That was my first one. This year, it was awesome. It really was awesome. Attend the events. Read your email. And that's it. I mean, does anyone have any questions for me? It's late, so I just want to be respectful of time. So, thank you.
Thank you again for being a part of our 2-day virtual State of Black Economic Summit. It was a great time for all. A lot of information was exchanged, but motion without action leads to the status quo. It's my hope that the information that was disseminated over these past 2 days will be leveraged to the fullest extent. The relationships that you have established, that those two will be leveraged for mutual exchange. African Americans in New Jersey, African Americans in America have contributed to the greatness of the state and this country. And in many instances, our value has not been fully leveraged to the benefit of the state of New Jersey or to America. So this is our chance collectively to reset and set forth on a new horizon to make New Jersey a better place to live and work for all. You know, Governor Murphy touts this fairer and stronger economy. We want to be in alignment with the governor to make things more fairer, stronger, and more equitable. And that's what this conversation was all about. Our disparities as it relates to education, health, workforce development, public safety, and growth and economic opportunity for our businesses. They all have to be in a better place in order for New Jersey to be a more competitive state. And then the last thing I'll say, you know, coming out of this COVID-19 pandemic, we lost a lot of families, sickness, death, a lot of hardship, very traumatic time for a lot of households. And then the public safety aspect. A lot of our brothers and sisters have been slaughtered on the streets and in their homes. This must stop. We're all our brother's keeper, and we must remember that. Violence against anybody is not good, and we've had enough of it. So it's our hope that we will move forward after this conference, living, working more closely together for a better state. Please join us here at the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey. For additional information, it's AACCNJ.com. God bless you.